Chapter 1189. What's wrong? Open the window for me. Lu Shuangshuang saw Kerlin's silhouette standing in front of the window, so she quickly reached out and knocked on the window. Kerlin quickly retracted her hand that was about to open the window. She whispered cautiously, I can't open the window for you yet, unless you answer a few questions of mine, and let me confirm your identity. What kind of joke is this? I am the real Lu Shuangshuang. Can't you open the window now? I really have something important to discuss with you. Lu Shuangshuang's silhouette paced back and forth outside the window. She was clearly getting impatient. No, unless you can answer my questions correctly, I will never open the window. Lu Shuangshuang's abnormal behavior deepened the doubt in Kerlin's heart. She immediately asked, Shuangshuang, let me ask you, when did we meet? We were. Don't come near me. Kuer, save me. Lu Shuangshuang let out a scream of fear before she could answer the question. Hearing Lu Shuangshuang's scream, Kerlin was shocked. She looked out the window and saw a few more silhouettes. They seemed to be pulling Lu Shuangshuang. Kerlin was dumbfounded. She couldn't care less and quickly reached out to open the latch. But when she opened the window a little, a wisp of black fog that was hard to see with the naked eye quietly floated in through the gap. Hehe. I didn't think you were so smart. You're much harder to fool than that little girl Lu Shuangshuang. A wretched voice rang out. Kerlin felt the window being pushed with great force. She couldn't help but take 2 steps back. The black figure outside the window directly pushed open the window and jumped into the room. You're not Lu Shuangshuang. Kerlin saw the black figure and was about to shout for help. Suddenly she felt her brain go dizzy. Then, she lost all her strength and fell to the ground. Before she fainted, Lin Kuer saw an incomparably ugly man. His body was constantly emitting a black fog, and he was slowly walking towards her with complacent steps. TSK, little girl, you're quite pretty. It's a pity that master doesn't allow me to touch you. Otherwise, I'll let you have a good taste of what it's like to die. The vulgar man stared greedily at Kerlin's exquisite body. He unconsciously stuck out his tongue and licked his lips with a lecherous look. Stupid girl. Why are you quarreling in the middle of the night? Hurry up and go to sleep. Did you forget that you still have class tomorrow? Outside the room, Kerlin's mother walked over in a daze, knocked on the door, and asked loudly with dissatisfaction. The vulgar man furrowed his brows. He felt that he shouldn't stay here for long. It would be troublesome if he was discovered. He made a prompt decision, picked up the unconscious Kerlin, and jumped out of the window in a flash, disappearing into the boundless night. Bang! Seeing that Kerlin didn't respond for a long time, Lin's mother vigorously pushed the door open, but what she saw was only a gradually dissipating black mist, an empty room, and 2 swaying open windows. Her daughter was nowhere to be seen. Not good. Old man, don't sleep. Our Kuer is gone. After standing there in a daze for a long time, Mother Lin finally reacted. She immediately turned pale with fright and ran to her room while screaming. Carrying Kerlin on his back, he quickly shuttled through the shanty town. The vulgar man didn't seem to feel her weight at all. He ran a few kilometers effortlessly and looked back from time to time to see if anyone would follow him. It wasn't until the vulgar man entered a dense forest that he felt that no one should be following him, that he slowed down and continued to walk forward leisurely. After walking for another 10 minutes, the vulgar man came to the front of 2 broken wooden houses. He first pushed open the door of one of the wooden houses, shut Kerlin in, and carefully locked her with a chain. After confirming that everything was fine, he tiptoed out of the wooden house. You damn lecher, you run quite fast. If it weren't for my strength, I'm afraid that you would have succeeded today. The vulgar man had just stepped out of the door when he heard a charming voice suddenly ring out, and he was suddenly shocked. Looking up, the vulgar man found that under the moonlight not far away, there were 2 beautiful women standing in the dense forest, staring at him. The vulgar man's eyes immediately lit up. These 2 women were both stunners. Moreover, they each had their own merits. One of them was dressed like a Taoist nun, and she had an air of arrogance. Although she looked very young, her figure was exquisite, and she had an awe-inspiring and inviolable temperament. and the other one should be the woman who had just spoken to him. This woman's temperament was a notch higher than the one beside her. Her eyes were coquettish, her figure was curvy, and her skin was fair. Although she looked like she had been through a lot, she was extremely attractive, and people couldn't help but want to love her. With the moonlight sprinkling down from the top of the forest, the two women's faces were even more beautiful. The vulgar man stared straight at the two women's delicate bodies, and he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. "What are you looking at? Damn lecher. Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyeballs and throw them to the side of the road to feed the dogs." Li Xian'er's long, shapely eyebrows raised, and she angrily scolded. The vulgar man's eyes kept going back and forth between her and Hong Zhu, and he even glanced at some private parts of their bodies. His greedy and lustful gaze made Li Xian'er feel very uncomfortable. Previously, Li Xian'er and Hong Zhu had been squatting outside Lin's house in the slums, and they had witnessed the vulgar man taking Lin away. Li Xian'er had wanted to immediately come to her rescue, but she was stopped by Hong Zhu in time. The whole process of this guy using Lu Shuangshuang as a cover to deceive Lin was heard by Hong Zhu without missing a word. She immediately deduced that Lu Shuangshuang should have also been taken away by this vulgar man. Therefore, she didn't immediately make a move, but quietly followed him. She wanted to use this opportunity to find the melon by following the vine and rescue Lu Shuangshuang as well. Fortunately, Li Xian'er was also a cultivator, and she could release her divine sense. She followed the vulgar man from afar, so he didn't notice her. When they saw him enter the wooden house and settle Lin down, the two women looked at each other and felt that the time had come. They no longer hid, and both stood out. "Yo, this chick's temper is quite fierce. But it doesn't matter. I like to tame wild horses the most." Sunabayo didn't care about Li Xian'er's scolding at all. He grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. "I've heard too much of your mouth." Hong Zhu curled her lips and sneered. "Don't just stand there and enjoy yourself. If you have the ability, why don't you come over and try taming her?" Chapter 1190. If you want to come, I, Sunabayo, have many tricks up my sleeves. I guarantee that your soul will soar to the heavens. Sunabayo slowly walked over, rubbing his palms together as he looked at the two of them, salivating as he muttered, "Ha ha! I didn't think that my luck would be so good today. There are actually two such exquisite goods that have delivered themselves to my doorstep. Shameless, despicable, scum." Li Xian'er looked at Sunabayo with disgust as she mercilessly insulted him. "Thank you for your praise." Sunabayo shamelessly licked his lips, then suddenly froze for a moment. He narrowed his eyes as he carefully examined Hong Zhu, a happy expression appearing on his face as he said, I didn't think that your body would also have spiritual energy. Waha! It seems that today's trip was really worth it. So you also have this kind of ability. No wonder you were able to find Lu Shuangshuang and Lin." Hong Zhu finally understood the reason and coldly said, "But everything ends here. Don't even think about taking them away alive. So you finally told me your goal?" Sunabayo didn't seem surprised at all, and instead smiled wickedly. "Unfortunately, I don't want to stop here. I still want to have some fun with you beauties." Hong Zhu saw that Sunabayo seemed to be on guard and inwardly cursed. She immediately activated her cultivation technique and displayed the strength of a peak 5th layer demon general, the corners of her mouth curling up as she suddenly revealed a soul-stirring smile. Sunabayo didn't even have time to react before he saw Hong Zhu's enchanting smile. His eyes immediately stared blankly, feeling as if the entire world had brightened because of her smile. Hong Zhu's cherry lips parted slightly as she said in an extremely seductive voice, "Little foolish K, don't you think elder sister is beautiful? Come and play with elder sister for a while." Li Xian'er was standing next to Hong Zhu, so she didn't see her smile, but when she heard Hong Zhu's voice, she couldn't help but feel her heart flutter. Even though Hong Zhu's voice wasn't directed at her, Li Xian'er was still nearly unable to bear the aftershock. If the others were already in such a state, Sunabayo, who was directly facing Hong Zhu, was even more unbearable. His expression was absent-minded, and a certain part of his body was about to explode as he spread his arms wide towards Hongju and leapt towards her with soulless eyes, muttering, "All right, I'm coming over. Sister, wait for me." When Li Xian'er heard Sun Abayo's voice that sounded like a broken gong, she suddenly quivered and sobered up. She turned her head around and shot a surprised look at Hongju. She was still puzzled, wondering what was going on with Hongju. Why was he acting up for no reason? At this moment, Li Xian'er couldn't care less anymore. She whispered, "Sister Hongju, there's no need to talk so much with him. Just let me chop this scum to death with my palm." Hearing Li Xian'er's words, Hongju's expression did not change. He continued to stare at Sun Abayo, but his finger moved slightly, and he lightly pointed at Li Xian'er. Seeing Hongju's strange behavior, Li Xian'er was slightly taken aback. She suddenly realized that Hongju was not fooling around with her, but was using a charm technique, and she pointed at him, indicating for him to attack with all his strength. Li Xian'er immediately turned her head and saw that Sun Abayo was completely captivated and defenseless. She knew that this was the best time for her to attack, so she revealed the strength of the peak of level 9 of the Qi refinement stage. Then, she flew towards Sun Abayo and attacked him with all her strength. Boom! Li Xian'er's palm wind slapped Sun Abayo's body firmly, sending him flying backward and directly smashing into the wooden house not far behind him, making a loud crackling sound. This kind of trash scum can't even withstand a single blow. With just this bit of ability, he still has the nerve to come out and make a fool of himself? Li Xian'er said disdainfully as she folded her arms across her chest. After waiting for a while, and seeing that there was no movement from the wooden house, Li Xian'er took a step forward and prepared to go to another wooden house to save the others. However, she had only taken one step when she was pulled back by Hongju. "Wait, he's still alive." Hongju pointed at the wooden house with a solemn expression. Li Xian'er turned her head and saw that although no one had come out of the house, a black mist was gradually spreading out from the house. Seeing this, Li Xian'er couldn't help but frown. Before she could release her divine sense to investigate the situation inside the house, the black mist suddenly and rapidly expanded, instantly enveloping the entire small wooden house. The color of the black mist was extremely dark, making it impossible to see what was happening inside the wooden house. After a while, a blurry figure slowly emerged from the black mist. The two women were inwardly shocked as they focused all of their attention and vigilance. It didn't take long before the figure revealed its true appearance. It was Sun Abayo, who had an extremely furious expression on his face. The strange black mist behind Sun Abayo rapidly shrank as it continuously surged into Sun Abayo's body. It didn't take long for all the black mist in the wooden house to be absorbed into Sun Abayo's body. In addition to this, there was also some extremely dark black mist swirling around Sun Abayo's body, making him look extremely sinister and terrifying. "You two stinking bitches. You actually dared to use such a despicable trick to sneak attack me. Just watch how I kill you." Sun Abayo was clearly enraged. With a furious roar, the black mist around his body began to squirm as if it had a mind of its own. Hongju's expression was very serious. It was obvious that he was somewhat fearful of Sun Abayo's abilities. However, Sun Abayo did not wait for the two women to react. He instantly pushed the black mist around his body to its limit, opened his palms, and pounced forward like a bat. As he pounced forward with a sinister expression, Sun Abayo shouted in a low voice, "Flower-destroying demon palm! Li Xian'er, get out of the way. We're no match for him." Hongju immediately turned pale with fright. Although this Sun Abayo looked extremely ugly and only had the cultivation of a fifth-layer evil general, the power that he exuded was far higher than that of an ordinary cultivator. Evil cultivators were extremely unscrupulous in their cultivation methods. For example, they would use the fresh blood of someone who had just died to cultivate, or they would use corpse poison and corpse qi to cultivate, and so on. It was precisely because they were unscrupulous in their cultivation that they would not hesitate to harm ordinary people. As a result, the abilities that they cultivated were also extremely sinister. Ordinary cultivators of the same level, or even slightly higher cultivation levels, would not be able to withstand their attacks. Even though evil cultivators were existences that everyone wanted to kill, it was precisely because of the treacherous nature of their martial arts and mental cultivation methods that they were able to succeed time and time again when facing ordinary cultivators. Furthermore, Sunabayo cultivated the latrine poison, which was extremely corrosive. An ordinary person would not be able to withstand it at all. After Hong Zhu gave a loud roar, he reflexively dodged to the side, barely dodging the black mist. Then, he immediately turned his head to look at Li Xianer. Unfortunately, Li Xianer was not so lucky. Although she had already heard Hong Zhu's warning, she was still unable to dodge in time, and her right leg was directly struck by the black mist. Chapter 1191. Ah, it hurts. Li Xianer cried out in alarm. The moment the black mist swept past her, the pants on her right leg had been corroded into nothingness. Her calf was a bloody mess, and the wound was extremely deep. The toxicity of this black mist was simply too powerful. If Li Xianer had not immediately used her yuan qi to protect her body after hearing Hong Zhu's words, her right leg would probably have been crippled by now. Heh, now you know pain? Weren't you pretty awesome when you attacked me just now? Sunabayo arrogantly raised his chin and looked disdainfully at the deathly pale Li Xian, and Hong Zhu. TSK, and you say I'm scum, that I can't withstand a single blow? I don't think you two are any better. Cut the crap. You actually used such a vicious move. You must have harmed many ordinary people. Of course you're scum. You're dust that can't even be considered a human. Dust. Li Xianer gritted her teeth and glared at Sunabayo. Haha, it seems that you have quite a bit of strength. You've even come up with a new way to curse people. Sunabayo sneered, the black mist surrounding his body suddenly thickening. Li Xianer's complexion paled. She had not expected Sunabayo to still have a trick up his sleeve. Hong Zhu's complexion flickered between green and white. His eyes flickered unpredictably, as if he was fiercely thinking about something. Sunabayo admired Li Xianer's flustered appearance with satisfaction. His shifty eyes swept over her exquisite body, and he said with a despicable smile, "Little fairy ant, don't be so afraid. If you promise to play with me for a few days, maybe I'll be kind and spare your life. How about it? Play with you my ass. Go to hell." Li Xianer was instantly enraged. Forcefully enduring the pain in her right leg, she gathered yuan qi in her palms and fiercely slapped at Sunabayo. Yo, I thought that little fairy ant was very powerful. I didn't expect you to only have this much ability. Sunabayo chuckled and stood in place without dodging, allowing Li Xianer's palm wind to strike him. After all, Li Xianer's strength was simply too low. She was unable to cause any harm to Sunabayo. If Sunabayo had not been bewitched by Hong Zhu, Li Xianer would not have been able to even get close to him. Seeing that her palm strike with all her strength seemed to have no effect on Sunabayo, Li Xianer's face finally showed an expression of despair. Was she really going to lose her innocence that she had guarded for more than 10 years here today? Xianer, think of a way to rescue Kerlin and Lu Shuangshuang. Leave this little fool to me, Hong Zhu suddenly said in a deep voice. Li Xianer and Sunabayo both turned their heads to look and saw Hong Zhu take out a small porcelain bottle from his bosom. He opened the cork and hesitated for a moment before his expression gradually turned resolute. He raised his head and drank the medicine inside in one gulp. Hey, little slut, you've already started drinking your medicine? Sunabayo winked and teased. But you're right. A strong man like me definitely has some abilities that surpass ordinary people. If you don't use some medicine, I'm afraid you won't be able to stand it after a few rounds. Who knows, you might even cry and beg for mercy. Ha ha ha. Sunabayo felt that Hong Zhu was just too alluring. Even if she was a woman with spiritual energy and was the target of his mission, he still couldn't help but want to go 300 rounds with her. This kind of unparalleled temptation was something he had never felt from any other woman. Originally, Sunabayo's master, Old Man Shishan, knew that Sunabayo's lust was too great and had repeatedly warned Sunabayo that he was not allowed to touch women with spiritual energy. But now that he had seen such a stunningly beautiful woman, Sunabayo couldn't care less. Sunabayo had already made up his mind. In any case, his master had gone on a long journey. After he finished playing with Hongju, he would kill that person and erase all traces, pretending that he had never found this person. This way, his master wouldn't be able to find out. Haha, little fool, don't be impatient. You're so tall and mighty, so you should let big sister prepare, right? Hongju finished drinking the medicine, threw the small bottle away, and charmingly winked at Sunabayo. Since big sister has said so, how could I not agree? Sunabayo looked at Hongju, whose eyes and brows were full of charm, and felt his lower abdomen heat up. He licked his lips and said, "When will big sister be ready? I can't wait any longer. If you delay any longer, I can't guarantee that I will punish you." At this time, it had already been a while since she had drunk the medicine. Hongju's lips and eyes had gradually turned a pinkish purple, and a faint purple mist was also emitting from her body. She sweetly smiled at Sunabayo, then hooked her finger and said, "Big sister is ready, little fool, hurry up and come over. Even big sister can't help it anymore." Hee hee, stupid big sister. Do you think that this kind of low-level seduction technique will still work on your little brother? Although Sunabayo said this, his lower body still very obediently propped up a small tent. However, Sunabayo still didn't relax his vigilance. While he was fully on guard, he neared Hongju with an evil smile on his face. "Little brother, you're walking so slowly. If big sister waits too long, her mood won't be good." Hongju saw that Sunabayo's steps were slow and anxious, so she purposely pouted, puffed up her cheeks and acted cute. "What's the rush, big sister? Little brother is coming." Sunabayo finally arrived in front of Hongju, his eyes burning with passion as he stretched his hands straight towards her chest. But before Sunabayo's hands could touch Hongju's body, the faint purple mist around Hongju's body suddenly moved as if it had a mind of its own. It quickly left Hongju's body and wrapped around Sunabayo's arms. Before Sunabayo could react, the faint purple mist had already spread over his body, and then it took the opportunity to drill into his nostrils. This is... Sunabayo was instantly dumbfounded. In a panic, he hurriedly mobilized the demonic energy in his body to resist, but he didn't expect that the black mist around his body was completely unable to disperse the faint purple mist. Instead, it was tightly wrapped around his body, unable to resist at all. In truth, Sunabayo's actual combat experience was far too lacking. So he didn't know that the medicine that Hongju had taken was an extremely precious strengthening agent that could greatly enhance her seduction technique for a short period of time. Although Hongju's strength seemed to still be at the peak of the 5th layer of demonic cultivation, and there was no difference from before, her seduction technique had been raised to a whole new level. If she wanted to control Sunabayo's mind, it would be a simple matter. But from the start, Hongju didn't plan on using the medicine to increase her strength. Although this medicine could temporarily enhance her seduction technique, it would also come at a price. It would completely drain the demonic energy in her body. Chapter 1192. The reason for this was very simple. This kind of enhancer was similar to the stimulants used in sports competitions. When taken, it could greatly enhance a person's bodily functions. However, after the efficacy of the drug waned, the person's internal organs would be greatly damaged. Moreover, it was very likely that the person would become addicted to the drug and suffer from incurable side effects. However, the current situation was critical. Hongju could not just watch as Sunabayo violated Li Xian, nor could she use her weak strength to control him. After thinking it over, she could only take a risk and use the enhancer to increase the effects of the charm technique in an attempt to buy enough time. The light purple mist quickly invaded Sunabayo's brain. Sunabayo, who was still trying to resist, suddenly felt his vision blur. He saw that Hongju was wearing a transparent sand-like nightgown, which vividly displayed her curvaceous figure. Moreover, she even struck all kinds of seductive poses and whispered sweet nothings to Sunabayo, flirting with him, causing him to feel his blood boil. When Sunabayo saw this, he immediately threw all thoughts of resisting the purple mist to the back of his mind. He quickly took off his clothes and impatiently rushed over, hugged Hongju, and let out a low growl from time to time. My God, doesn't this damned scum feel pain? He's actually hugging a piece of wood. Li Xian'er, who was squatting to the side and unable to keep up with the rhythm, was a little dazed as she muttered to herself in extreme shock. At this time, in front of her, the naked Sunabayo was doing his best to exercise a large piece of wood, with an extremely comfortable expression on his face. The impact of this scene was too great. Li Xian'er was so shocked that she almost forgot about the injury on her leg. She hurriedly turned her head away, afraid that she would get a pinprick, completely unable to understand what was going on. But after turning her head around, Li Xian'er suddenly discovered that Hongju was standing in the same place with full concentration, motionlessly staring at Sunabayo. Hongju's entire body was wrapped in a pale purple mist, and that mist was constantly drilling into Sunabayo's nostrils. Li Xian'er was no fool and immediately understood the reason. It seemed that after Hongju drank that bottle of medicine, she had once again used her charm technique to control Sunabayo. This was an opportunity that Hongju had fought for with great difficulty. Li Xian'er knew that she could not hesitate, and immediately struggled to her feet. Taking advantage of the fact that Sunabayo had fallen into an illusion and was unaware, she limped towards the wooden house where Kerlin was imprisoned. After all, Hongju had never said how long she could control Sunabayo for. Right now, he could only seize every second and save Kerlin and Lu Shuangshuang as soon as possible. Kerlin! How are you? Wake up. Li Xian'er walked into the wooden hut and came to Kerlin's side. She shouted a few words and shook her body. In the end, Kerlin was still lying there motionless with her eyes closed. She was still unconscious. Li Xian'er furrowed her brows. She did not care too much, and quickly used her yuan qi to sever the shackles that bound Lin Kuer. With great difficulty, she helped her up and moved her to the outside of the wooden hut to lean against before walking towards the other wooden hut. Shuangshuang, Lu Shuangshuang, where are you? After looking around the other wooden hut for a long time, Li Xian'er could not find any trace of Lu Shuangshuang. The entire wooden hut was only so big and completely empty. Let alone a person, there was not even the shadow of a ghost. Moreover, this wooden hut had been rammed by Sunabayo before, and was already on the verge of collapse. From time to time, it would creak and crack, as if it could collapse at any moment. With the situation being so urgent, Li Xian'er did not dare to stay any longer. She released her divine sense, and carefully inspected the entire wooden hut. After confirming that there was no one else around, she turned around and limped out. Boom! Not long after Li Xian'er left the wooden hut, the entire hut collapsed with a loud rumble, instantly turning into ruins. Li Xian'er jumped in fright and hurriedly helped Kerlin up. When she turned around, she saw that Hongju was still standing in the same spot, her face covered in sweat. The purple mist surrounding her was gradually decreasing, and Sunabayo was still hugging a log and frantically plowing the land. Enduring the pain in her leg, Li Xian'er walked to Hongju's side and whispered, Big sister Hongju, I've already rescued Kerlin, but I couldn't find Lu Shuangshuang even after searching through both huts. I'm guessing that she's already been moved. Hongju gave a slight nod and quickly circulated her mental cultivation method, pouring all the purple mist surrounding her into Sunabayo's body in one go. Then, as if her entire body had collapsed, her legs went soft and she directly sat on the ground. Her lips and eyelids were no longer purple, and had returned to their normal color. Big sister Hongju, what's wrong? Li Xian'er turned pale with fright. She hastily stretched out her empty hand, and tried to help Hongju up from the ground. As she supported Hongju, Li Xian'er could feel that Hongju's body was limp and powerless, as if his entire body had been sucked dry. I'm fine. Let's hurry up and leave this place. My charm technique won't last much longer. Hongju weakly waved his hand, took out a restorative pill, stuffed it into his mouth, and swallowed it as he panted. All right, let's go. Li Xian'er did not dare to be negligent. She supported Lin with one hand and Hongju with the other, enduring the pain in her leg as she staggered along the path they had come from. However, they had only taken a few steps when Li Xian'er suddenly sensed an abnormally evil aura gradually approaching her position. Moreover, that aura was extremely oppressive and was much stronger than Sun Abayo's. Li Xian'er judged that this person should be an extremely high-level evil cultivator expert. If they continued forward, they would definitely run into that evil cultivator expert. Li Xian'er and her group had basically lost all their fighting strength and would definitely not be able to defeat that evil cultivator. However, if they retreated, they would run into that scum Sun Abayo, who was diligently plowing the land. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. What should they do? Li Xian'er immediately began to panic. Go that way. Hongju forced himself to raise his hand and pointed towards the depths of the forest before he weakly closed his eyes. Li Xian'er stamped her foot, gritted her teeth, and supported the two girls as they turned around and walked deeper into the forest. At the same time, she continued to release her divine sense to observe the movements of that evil cultivator expert, wanting to see if he would chase after them. After walking for an unknown period of time, Li Xian'er could clearly feel that the yuan qi in her body was rapidly depleting due to the continuous release of her divine sense. Fortunately, that evil cultivator expert was not heading in their direction. It seemed that he had yet to discover any traces of them. After walking for a while more, Li Xian'er felt that the vitality in her body was about to be completely exhausted, while Hongju and Lin Kuer were still unconscious. Just as she was about to be unable to hold on any longer, she suddenly noticed a hollow tree hole from the corner of her eye. With a thought, she immediately brought the two girls with her and dove into it. Chapter 1193. As soon as she got into the tree hole, Li Xian'er's vision went black, and she couldn't see anything. She stepped on a thick layer of rotten leaves. Her legs suddenly weakened, and she fell to the ground. The two women she was holding also fell heavily. At this time, Li Xian'er's vitality was finally completely exhausted. After she fell, she fainted directly without saying a word. For a moment, there were three unconscious beauties lying on the ground. In this dark and damp tree hole, it formed a unique scene. The evil master that Li Xian'er sensed was West Mountain Elder. When he returned to his residence, he found that Sun Abayo was standing outside naked, holding a big wood in his hand, and working hard. Not far away, one of the two wooden houses had collapsed, and the door of the other was wide open. He suddenly realized the seriousness of the matter. Sun Abayo, wake the F***ck up. Seeing Sun Abayo looking at the wood with an intoxicated face, West Mountain Elder was so angry that he immediately operated his mental cultivation method, roared and kicked him. Sun Abayo was still immersed in the wonderful illusion. When he suddenly heard this familiar roar, he was immediately scared witless. Then he was kicked so hard that he rolled down from the log. Look at what you have done. I told you to go and catch people, but why are you hugging a piece of wood? West Mountain Elder slapped him and said angrily, Hurry up and put on your clothes, what a waste. Ouch, don't hit master. I'll put on my clothes, I'll put them on now. Sun Abayo was so scared that he shivered. He quickly picked up the clothes on the ground and put them on. He looked around in confusion. What's going on? Wasn't he having fun with that slut just now? How did she disappear in the blink of an eye? What's the situation with the wood on the ground? Glancing at Sun Abayo, who was at a loss, West Mountain Elder angrily ran to the only remaining wooden house to take a look. When he found that there was no one inside, he couldn't help but get even angrier. He turned around and slapped Sun Abayo's face again, and roared fiercely. Where is she? Where's the girl you caught just now? I don't know. Wasn't he here just now? Sun Abayo spun on the spot after being hit, but he did not dare to complain. Clutching his head, he hurriedly ran into the wooden house, only to discover that Lin Kuer had indeed disappeared without a trace. From the looks of it, she should have been rescued by those two girls. Tell me, you brainless idiot, what else can you do? If you can't even keep an eye on a little girl, how am I going to explain this to the elders of the upper peaks? Elder Shishan angrily pointed at Son Abayo's nose and scolded. If it weren't for the fact that this guy still had some value, he would have already slapped this idiot to death. Master, I'm sorry. It's all because of a moment of carelessness that I fell for that little hussy's trick. Son Abayo lowered his head in fear and said, Don't be angry. I promise it won't happen again. Please forgive me this time. Humph. If you didn't have the ability to sense spiritual energy, do you think you would still be alive today? You really can't do anything, but you're good at spoiling things. Elder Shishan's anger hadn't subsided, and he scolded a few more times. Son Abayo listened obediently until Elder Shishan finally stopped. He asked carefully, Master, what are we going to do next? Elder Shishan snorted coldly, frowned and said, Hurry up and pack up. We can't stay in this place any longer. Otherwise, both of us won't have a good time. Son Abayo nodded repeatedly and quickly packed up the luggage in the cabin. Then, he burned the cabin to ashes with a fire. Staring at the dim fire, Son Abayo couldn't help but recall the scene of being chased before. He subconsciously shivered. About a year ago, a martial arts expert suddenly appeared in the secular world. He was so powerful that he almost killed all the evil cultivators in Songning City. His strength was so high that no evil cultivator in the secular world was a match for him. They were killed until they couldn't fight back. Elder Shishan and Son Abayo couldn't escape the master's eagle eyes. The two of them were chased like stray dogs. They were extremely embarrassed. It was not easy for them to escape. Although they were lucky to save their lives, both of them were also seriously injured. Through the layers of connections in the inner martial arts world, Elder Shishan finally inquired about the master's information. It turned out that it was Song Qing-shu of the inner martial arts world's Song family. He didn't know why he suddenly came to the secular world to kill evil cultivators. Although there were rules in the inner martial arts world that one couldn't interfere in the disputes of the secular world, evil cultivators were not included. Therefore, Song Qingshu's actions were not stopped by anyone. Elder Shishan, who learned of this situation, became more cautious. He took Son Abayo to hide in the deep mountains and forests for a few months, taking the opportunity to heal. Recently, he gradually recovered and began to carry out the task of the upper peak again. In fact, the task assigned to Elder Shishan was very simple. It was to find a woman with spiritual energy in the secular world. As for why the upper peak had such a need, Elder Shishan naturally didn't dare to ask. In short, the upper peak had clearly promised that as long as he could find the person, the upper peak would provide him with enough cultivation resources and all kinds of treasures. In the beginning, Elder Shishan was still worried about how he could find a woman with spiritual energy. However, later, he accidentally discovered that his disciple Son Abayo actually had the ability to sense whether a woman had spiritual energy or not. Elder Shishan speculated that it might be because Son Abayo hid in the women's toilet all year round, so he was more sensitive to the smell of women. However, Son Abayo's ability was not strong. He could only judge whether a woman had spiritual energy after getting close to her. Therefore, Elder Shishan originally planned to use Lu Shuangshuang's body as a mobile furnace before Son Abayo, so that he could sense suitable candidates in Songning City. Unexpectedly, he didn't expect that Lu Shuangshuang would accidentally lose her virginity to Xiao Chun. When her body was broken, the furnace in Lu Shuangshuang's body was also destroyed. Elder Shishan had no choice but to activate the backup plan and let Son Abayo go out to sense the woman with spiritual energy. As a result, Elder Shishan never expected that they only had time to catch Lu Shuangshuang. During the second operation, Son Abayo was actually discovered. Not only did the other party discover Son Abayo, but they also deliberately came to the door. Although Son Abayo was spared, Elder Shishan estimated that it would not be long before the inner martial arts world would send more masters to encircle and annihilate the evil cultivators. In such a bad situation, Elder Shishan had to use the 36 stratagems again, which was to run away. Chapter 1194. Ugh! In the dim tree hole, Lysianer let out a low moan and opened her eyes in a daze. After a while, Lysianer gradually recalled what had happened and hurriedly raised her head to look at Kerlin beside her. She discovered that she was still unconscious while Hongju was sitting cross-legged on the ground, adjusting his breathing. It seemed that he had woken up long ago. "You're awake?" Hongju finished adjusting his breathing and exhaled a mouthful of impure air. He looked at Lysianer and helplessly smiled bitterly. "It was fortunate that you were there last night. Otherwise, with my strength alone, I would not have been able to contend against that evil cultivator, much less successfully rescue Kerlin." "Last night? What time is it now?" Lysianer was slightly startled. She sat up and discovered that the sky outside the tree hole was gradually brightening. Lysianer silently calculated the time. She did not expect that she had actually been unconscious for several hours. Looking at Hongju's pale complexion, Lysianer shook her head and said, "Actually, you don't need to thank me. If you hadn't used Drag that scum away, I'm afraid that I would have already been violated by him." "Hehe, it's nothing." Hongju smiled faintly, then suddenly remembered something and asked, "Right, when we left last night, I remember that you didn't seem to want to go out of the forest, as if there was some danger up ahead, so I told you to go deeper into the forest. Afterwards I fainted. Did you notice anything at that time?" Recalling last night's encounter, Lysianer nodded with lingering fear and said, "When I took you to escape, I sensed another evil master coming in our direction from outside the forest. That master's strength was far above that scumbag. I guess it was his master or companion, so I didn't dare to go forward. So that's how it was. It seems that we really underestimated our enemy." Hongju could not help sighing in relief. Fortunately, that Sunabayo was quite lustful, so his willpower was not strong enough, which was why he fell for my charm technique. I'm guessing that he should have collapsed and died by now. For some reason, Hongju suddenly thought of Xiao Chun at this moment. He was the first person who had been able to remain clear-headed under the full force of his charm technique. But he remembered that he was only a low-level cultivator at that time, so how could he have such strong willpower and mental strength? "Don't mention that scum. Just thinking about it makes me sick." Lysianer pursed her lips and looked down to check her wound. She found that it had already formed a scab, so it probably wouldn't be a big problem. Turning her head, Lysianer nudged Lin Kuo, attempting to wake her up. However, there was still no movement from her. Lysianer said in astonishment, "This is really strange. How could Lin Kuo be unconscious for such a long time? Did that scum drug her?" "I'm not too sure about that. Before you woke up, I gave her a medicinal pill, but in the end, she still didn't wake up." Hongju's thoughts were interrupted, and he shook his head faintly. She didn't know much about heretics, so she could only use normal medical skills to treat Kerlin. But it didn't seem to work. "Let me try. I don't believe that no matter how powerful those evil cultivators are, they can't be more powerful than our Five Elements sect." Lysianer operated her mental cultivation method, and just when she was about to pour her true chi into Kerlin's body, she was suddenly surprised to find that she had actually leveled up. Lysianer was originally at the peak of the 9th level of the chi refining stage, but now she had the strength of the consummate stage. She didn't expect that her cultivation, which hadn't increased for a long time, would unexpectedly break through in such a desperate situation yesterday. However, being happy was just being happy. Lysianer immediately restrained her mind and planned to wake up Kerlin first. Reaching out to grab Kerlin's wrist, Lysianer held her breath and slowly transferred her true chi into her body. At the same time, she also checked whether Kerlin was injured or not. After a round of inspection, Lysianer felt relieved. Kerlin didn't have any major problems. She was just hit by Sunabayo's evil technique, so there was a black fog in her head, which was constantly affecting her brain nerves. That was why she was unconscious for such a long time. Lysianer operated her true chi and guided the black fog out of her body. When the black fog was completely expelled, Kerlin's eyelids moved slightly, and she woke up not long after. Blinking her eyes in bewilderment, Lin Kuo suddenly leapt up. Save me. Dad. Mom. There's a bad guy who broke into my room. Ouch. Kerlin jumped 3 feet high, and her head directly hit the top of the tree hole. The impact made her see stars, and she was in so much pain that tears almost flowed out of her eyes. I say, Kerlin, aren't you being a little too dramatic? You didn't even look at your surroundings, and just shouted at the top of your lungs. What if you attracted the enemy? Lysianer said snappily, Don't worry. Sister Hongju has already killed that scumbag. Also, my eardrums are about to burst because of you. Ah, Miss Hongju, Miss Lysianer, how did you? What is this place? Kerlin rubbed her head with tears in her eyes, and only then did she remember to look at her surroundings. After surveying her surroundings, Lin Kuo discovered that this unfamiliar place was not her own room. Instead, it seemed to be some kind of tree hole. Just what kind of situation was this? Aya, you were captured by a heretic cultivator earlier. Sister Hongju and I risked our lives to save you from the hands of the heretic cultivator with great difficulty. But then an even more powerful heretic cultivator came. We couldn't defeat him, so we had no choice but to escape. Now we can only hide here for a while. Lysianer spread her hands and explained helplessly. So that's how it is. Kerlin had heard Lu Shuangshuang mention a few things about the martial arts world, and she also knew that heretic cultivators were bad people, so she was not surprised. She only timidly said with gratitude, I didn't expect that you and Miss Hongju would be willing to take such a huge risk to save me. We've only just met. I really don't know how to thank you. It's nothing. Although it took a lot of effort, we were still rescued. Hongju waved her hand, sighed, and said, It's a pity that we couldn't find Lu Shuangshuang. Otherwise this trip would have been perfect. Ah, Shuangshuang was also captured by them? Kerlin was greatly shocked, and then asked with some bewilderment. But Shuangshuang and I are just ordinary people. Why would the heretic cultivators want to capture us? If you were really an ordinary person, we wouldn't have to spend so much effort to protect you. Lysianer couldn't help but blurt out. Actually you. Halfway through her words, Lysianer suddenly stopped, not knowing whether she should tell the truth to Kerlin. If she told her, would she be able to accept it? Chapter 1195. Unable to come up with a solution, Lysianer could only cast a pleading look at Hongju. Actually what? Is there something different about me? Kerlin couldn't help but feel a little curious when she heard Lysianer's words and asked weakly. Xian, or let me talk to Kerlin. Hongju nodded at Lysianer, then bent his back and walked over to Lin Kuo's side. Holding her hand he said, Kuo, you may not have heard what I'm about to say before, but don't be too surprised. I won't lie to you. Oh, Lin Kuo obediently nodded, her face filled with anticipation as she looked at Hongju. Hongju sorted out his thoughts and said, Lysianer and I are both martial artists. This time, we received a mission from our clan to come to the secular world, to find a woman with spiritual qi in her body. Lu Shuangshuang originally met the requirements, so we contacted her. However, before we could confirm it, she was captured by an evil cultivator. Later on, we discovered that you were also a suitable candidate. We were worried that you would encounter the same situation as Lu Shuangshuang, so we secretly protected you. Ah, I have spiritual qi in my body, but why can't I feel it? Kerlin asked in astonishment after listening to the story. She thought to herself, these two girls aren't deliberately making up a story to trick me, are they? But they don't look like bad people. Hongju smiled and patiently explained, Haha, this is very normal. Only some cultivators with special abilities are able to sense spiritual energy. For example, me and that evil cultivator kid who captured you earlier. At any rate, this is a relatively special ability. Lysianer doesn't have it. You are also the same. This really? Then why am I not as strong as a cultivator? Or can use all kinds of strange skills? Kerlin still hadn't dispelled her doubts, and asked with a face full of doubt. In fact, Kerlin had always had a desire in her heart. Although she had never told anyone about it, she had always desired to become a powerful cultivator. If she became a cultivator, not only could she avoid being bullied by others, but she could also go to the warrior guild to take on missions. She once heard from Lu Shuangshuang that some cultivators could take on simple missions in the guild, such as running errands or delivering letters, and they could earn tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. In this way, not only could he relieve the financial burden of his family, but he would also not have to worry about not being able to find a job after he graduated from university. He had heard that it was very difficult for university students to find a job. If he could become a cultivator, then the problem of finding a job would be easily solved. Although Lin wasn't like Lu Shuangshuang, who fantasized about becoming a super powerful legendary cultivator like her idol, Yang Ming, she also had a small goal in her heart. Lin hoped that as long as she could become as strong as Xiao Chun, she would be satisfied. In Songning City, the reputation of the White Fox Swordsman was like thunder to the ears. Many cultivators had named the White Fox Swordsman as their idol. There were even many female cultivators who clamored every day to give birth to a little fox for the White Fox Swordsman. Lin knew that the White Fox Swordsman was Xiao Chun, but she had never told anyone about it. She didn't know how Xiao Chun was doing recently. It seemed that she hadn't heard from him for a long time. What has he been doing recently? That's right. Shouldn't he be married to the daughter of the Chung family? But why didn't he go back to the morning market to sell breakfast? She had seen a back view similar to Xiao Chun several times. But in the end, she realized that she had been mistaken. Ku-er, it seems that you've confused the concepts of spiritual energy and cultivators. While Lin's eyes were empty and her thoughts were running wild, Hongzhu shook his head with a faint smile and said, although there is spiritual energy in your body, you haven't gone through any systematic training. You also don't know how to use spiritual energy. Naturally, you can't become a cultivator. Is that so? Lin collected her thoughts and said with some disappointment, it seems that I still can't become a cultivator. Let me finish what I have to say. Hongzhu continued with a smile. You don't need to be too discouraged. As long as there is a suitable opportunity to stimulate the spiritual energy in your body, perhaps you can become an even more valiant expert. Lin's eyes lit up and she blurted out, really? Miss Hongzhu isn't lying to me, right? According to what you're saying, I can also become an expert like Xiao. White Fox Swordsman. Oh, you know White Fox Swordsman? Hongzhu was stunned for a moment. He carefully looked at Lin a few times, and suddenly remembered that he had seen Xiao Chen's information before. This Lin seems to be the person Xiao Chen used to like? Thinking of the photo in the information, and then looking at the flustered and innocent Lin in front of him, Hongzhu could immediately determine that it was her. He had never thought that by a freak combination of factors, he would unexpectedly find a girl who was related to Xiao Chen. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? I don't know him, because White Fox Swordsman is quite famous in Songning City, and Shuangshuang and I have talked about him before, so I remembered him. Lin was startled and waved her hands in panic, her eyes flickering. For some unknown reason, Lin didn't want to expose Xiao Chen's identity in front of others, so she subconsciously covered it up. Oh, so that's how it is. Hongzhu could naturally see that Lin was lying, but he was too lazy to expose her, so he changed the topic and said, White Fox Swordsman is indeed very powerful, but as long as you are willing to make some sacrifices, you might be even stronger than him. Ah, stronger than White Fox Swordsman? Can I really become such an expert? Lin was startled, and asked with a blank expression on her face. According to her understanding, Xiao Chun was already a very powerful existence. According to what Miss Hongzhu said, could she be more powerful than Xiao Chun? What kind of existence was that? Of course you can. Hongzhu nodded and said, in fact, you have an excellent opportunity right now. I have a bit of strength and can help you become a super expert. But there is a precondition to becoming an expert, and that is, you must first complete a mission. Mission? What mission? Lin was even more confused. Could it be that after completing the mission, she would become more powerful than Xiao Chun? Could it be that easy? Before I introduce the mission, I must first make one thing clear to you. Hongzhu's expression turned solemn as he earnestly said, this mission may endanger your life. Of course, you have the right to choose not to accept it, and I will not force you. Chapter 1196. My life is in danger? Kerlin's entire body shook as she shrank back in fear. Could it be that I might die? How frightening. If it was as Miss Hongzhu had said, that I might have to pay with my life in order to become a super expert, wasn't that a little too extreme? In fact, she didn't have a particularly big ambition. She just wanted to live an ordinary life. Although she sometimes fantasized that she would suddenly become a powerful master one day, it was only in her nightmares and fantasies. Now that Kerlin knew that she had a chance to turn her fantasies into reality, but there was also the possibility of losing her life, the naturally timid Kerlin immediately thought of retreating. This idea was far too frightening, and she did not even have the courage to try it. Miss Coeur, you don't have to choose whether to agree or refuse right now. You can go back and think about it for a few days. Seeing Lin Coeur's hesitation, Hongzhu smiled faintly and said, however, there isn't much time left for you, because I still need to find other suitable candidates. I hope that you can give me a reply as soon as possible. Seeing Kerlin's timid appearance, Hongzhu did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, no one had ever attempted the sacrifice before, and no one could say for sure whether they would lose their life. Thus, the participants needed to have sufficient awareness. Kerlin frantically raised her head to look at Hongzhu. Before turning to look at Li Xian'er, Kerlin suddenly noticed that there was a huge scar on Li Xian'er's leg. Judging from the fresh scabs and the bloodstains around it, it was most likely the wound she had received last night, when she was rescuing her. Seeing this, Kerlin felt that she was being a little selfish. If Hongzhu and Li Xian'er had not risked their lives to save her, she would have lost her life long ago. What was the point of talking about life and ideals? Since they have shown me kindness, it is only normal for me to repay them. Besides, Hongzhu had just explained that I have a chance to become a top expert, but there is also a chance that I might lose my life. Even so, there is still a 50% chance, right? It is much better than being captured by the evil cultivators and then tortured to death. Kerlin pondered for a moment and took a deep breath. Just as she was about to answer, she suddenly thought of something and said, I still have a question. What problem? As long as I can answer it, I will definitely tell you, Hongzhu said in a slightly surprised tone. If I leave with you, what will happen to my parents? Kerlin bit her lower lip and asked in a low voice. If I don't come back, who will take care of them in the future? My father's leg is still injured, and my mother has suffered for her whole life to support the whole family. I can't just leave them like this, right? Kerlin's heart ached at the thought of her parents' hard work, and her eyes reddened. Don't worry, we will give your parents a lot of money, enough for them to live out their old age. Li Xian'er thought for a while and added, in addition to these, if you have any other conditions, feel free to raise them. As long as they are not too harsh, we will satisfy them one by one. Hongzhu also felt a little helpless. Although she could understand Kerlin's concern, she could not think of any other way to make up for it other than money. After all, as long as Kerlin agreed to the ceremony, her life would be in danger. Then all right, I will agree to your conditions. Having obtained Hongzhu's promise, Kerlin no longer had any misgivings and simply nodded, saying, but before that, can I go see my parents one more time? I want to say goodbye to them. In truth, Kerlin did not care about large sums of money or great strength, but she was a girl who knew how to repay kindness. Hongzhu and Li Xian'er had saved her life, so she had agreed. You agree? Hongzhu was in a daze for a good while before he confirmed it with an incredulous look on his face. Hongzhu had originally thought that Kerlin would need some time to consider it, and had even been prepared to find someone else if Kerlin refused. He had never imagined that she would be so straightforward. Tell me about the specific details of the mission. I'm still a little confused. Kerlin forced a smile. Hongzhu looked at the confused Kerlin, and was still a little worried in his heart. So he gave her a brief introduction of the relationship between the internal martial world's immortal cultivation sects and the ghost cultivation sects, as well as the immortal cultivation world. Then, he explained to Kerlin that the opening of the immortal cultivation world required a woman with spiritual qi in her body to carry out the ceremony, as well as the dangers of the ceremony. Lysianer also stared blankly at Kerlin from the side. Although this little girl looked a little pure and naive, she should not be the kind of girl who did not have her own thoughts, right? Why did she suddenly become so straightforward? There's no need to think any further. After I go back and see my parents, I can go with you. Kerlin pursed her lips and said softly. With regards to Hongju's explanation, Kerlin did not really understand it, but after weighing the pros and cons, she still decided to go with Hongju to participate in the ceremony. There was no doubt that the gratitude of her parents for raising her was irreplaceable, but a person must know how to repay a debt of gratitude. Hongju and Lysianer's life-saving grace was also very important to Kerlin. From Kerlin's point of view, since her life had been saved by Hongju and Lysianer, she must repay them. As for the hardships her parents had endured to raise her, she could only repay them with the things that Hongju had promised her. If she had the chance to return in the future, she would repay them even more. All right, since you've agreed, let's set off now lest we waste time. Hongju stared at Kerlin and sighed inwardly. In order to open the immortal cultivation world and obtain the rich treasures and cultivation resources inside, who knew how many happy families would have to be broken up? Doing this, was it really appropriate? Although compared to the evil cultivators of the ghost cultivation sect, the methods of the immortal cultivation sect seemed more humane. At least they would explain clearly and let people consider whether they wanted to participate in the ceremony, unlike the ghost cultivation sect who would directly rob them. But from another point of view, there was not much difference between the two. Both were sacrificing the lives of others in order to obtain certain things and obtain their own benefits. After escorting Kerlin back to Shantytown, Hongju saw from afar that there were many policemen standing near her house. There were also many police cars parked there, filling the entire road. It was probably because Kerlin's parents had discovered that their daughter was missing that they had called the police. Chapter 1197. Kerlin wanted to go straight over and explain the situation to her parents. But just as she took a step forward, she stopped. She thought about it carefully. If she did this, she might bring a lot of trouble to Hongju and Lysianer. When she went to the police station or was questioned by her parents, it would inevitably cause a lot of trouble. After thinking about it for a while, Kerlin did not continue to walk forward. Instead, she looked at her parents from a distance and silently apologized to them in her heart. It was not until the police officers left that she nodded to Hongju. "You are leaving just like that? Is this really okay?" Lysianer asked in a low voice. "Don't you want to go and say goodbye to your parents? After all, after you go with us to the inner martial arts world, maybe you won't have the chance to come back." Hongju was also a little stunned. He thought that Kerlin would go and explain the situation, but he didn't expect that she would just hide in the distance and quietly look at them. You don't know my parents' temper. If they know that I am going to participate in such a dangerous ceremony, it is very likely that they won't let me go. I don't want to trouble you. After all, I have already promised you." Kerlin shook her head and explained. Lin Kuo was very sensible. After all, she had lived with her parents for so many years and had long understood their characters. Thus, she was able to guess their reactions accurately. "How about this? After you go back to the inner martial arts world and settle down, you write a letter to them. I will send someone to quietly send the letter and money to your home." Hongju gently patted Kerlin's shoulder and comforted her. "Don't worry. I will seriously ask my subordinates to take good care of your parents in the future. I will never let them suffer. After you successfully complete the task, you can come back and reunite with them." "Well, thank you, Sister Hongju." Kerlin timidly but gratefully looked at Hongju, thinking that she would soon be separated from her parents, perhaps forever. Her eyes couldn't help but become a little moist. Her throat seemed to be choked with something, as if tears would fall as soon as she opened her mouth. But Kerlin knew that this was her own decision, and she could not blame anyone else. So she could only silently wipe away her tears and take one last deep look at her elderly parents. Then, she resolutely turned around and left Shantytown with Hongju and Li Xianer. Kerlin's mother seemed to have sensed something. She suddenly raised her head and looked in the direction they had left in for a long time, but she could not see anything. What's wrong? Have you seen Ku'er? Kerlin's father also limped out of the house, squinting his eyes as he gazed into the distance. No. Sigh. I don't know where that damned girl went. It's really worrying. Mother Lin sighed and shook her head sadly. He had a fiery temper and often scolded his daughter. Now that Ku'er had suddenly disappeared, he was worried about her personal gains and losses. Don't think about it. Our Ku'er is blessed by the heavens. She will definitely be fine. Father Lin softly coughed a few times and returned to the house with Mother Lin, leaving behind only two hunched backs. Kerlin and her party had not gone far when Hongju's cell phone rang. She took out her cell phone and looked at it. Seeing that it was a call from one of Hong Ying's subordinates, Xiao Song, she pressed the answer button. Lord Hong Ying, are you still in Songning City? Patriarch Hong has a new task for you. Xiao Song said respectfully from the other end of the phone. Yes, I'm here. What task? Tell me. Hongju answered, but he was a little puzzled in his heart. Could it be that Patriarch Grandpa doesn't know that I'm looking for a woman with spiritual energy? Why would he assign me another task at this time? It's like this. Do you still remember Xiao Fei, the auctioneer of the Hong Chamber of Commerce? She is currently lurking in Songning City. Old Patriarch Hong wants you to invite her back before you return. Xiao Song reported in full detail. Senior Sister Xiao Fei? Hongju raised his eyebrows in astonishment. Soon after he asked, why is Patriarch Grandpa looking for her? Is he asking her to do something? I'm not too sure. I'm only responsible for conveying Patriarch Hong's orders. It's not appropriate for me to ask too many questions. I hope Lord Hong Ying can understand. Xiao Song stammered for a while before replying apologetically. Forget it. It has nothing to do with you. Just give me her contact information. Although Hongju was puzzled, he did not think too much about it. In any case, Patriarch Grandpa would definitely not harm him. All right, I'll immediately send you Xiao Fei's address. You can directly go to her house to find her. After saying that, Xiao Song immediately sent a text message to Hongju, which recorded Xiao Fei's specific address. Yes, I've received it. That's all. Hongju hung up and looked at the text message. After memorizing the address, he deleted the message. Although Hongju was still a little puzzled, he still gave a simple explanation to Kerlin and Li Xian before hurrying over to Xiao Fei's residence. That night, outside a large villa in the eastern suburbs of Songshan, two pitch-black figures were silently lurking in the lush greenery. For bright eyes stared straight at the villa without blinking, as if they were planning something. Ah Biao, are you sure there's a woman with spiritual energy in this villa? Don't get it wrong again. Elder Shishan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the slender figure reflected in the villa's window. Master, there's definitely no problem this time. I originally wanted to make a move, but this villa district is often patrolled by security guards. I was afraid that I'd get into trouble if I was discovered, so I went to capture Lu Shuangshuang and Kerlin first. I planned to capture this girl last. Sanabayo hurriedly nodded. Originally, Sanabayo wouldn't come to a high-class place like this villa district. After all, there were often security guards patrolling here, and the people who lived here were all rich and powerful. There might even be cultivators among them. If he acted rashly, it was very likely that he'd offend some important people, and he might even be hunted down by the warrior guild. Sanabayo was able to discover this woman with spiritual energy by chance. Once, when he was walking on the street, he suddenly saw a mature woman wearing a cheongsam. Her body was hot, and she was full of charm. Compared to the young and inexperienced female students, she was more appealing. He was instantly attracted to her to the point that his soul almost left his body. In a trance, Sanabayo secretly followed the mature woman, wanting to take a few more glances at her. In the end, he accidentally discovered that there was a trace of spiritual energy in her body. Perhaps because she had lost her virginity, the mature woman's spiritual energy was relatively weak. Sunabayo also only discovered it after following her for a while. However, compared to other ordinary women, this trace of spiritual energy was already very rare. Chapter 1198. Sunabayo paid attention and quietly followed her to the villa area. However, because the security of the villa area was relatively tight, and there were too many unknown risks, he didn't make a move immediately. Instead, he silently remembered the place where the royal sister lived, and planned to go back and make a long-term plan. According to the original plan, as long as Sunabayo could successfully catch Kerlin and Lu Shuangshuang, he didn't need to come here to take risks. However, he didn't expect that Kerlin would be rescued, so West Mountain Elder couldn't complete the task given by the higher-ups. In desperation, Sunabayo could only bring West Mountain Elder to this place, wanting to catch this beautiful young woman as a substitute. Abayo, the people who live here are either rich or noble. According to my experience, they usually hire cultivators as bodyguards. We have to be very careful when we make a move. If the target is too difficult to handle, then we can only choose to give up. Saving our lives is the most important thing. Do you understand? West Mountain Elder warned in a low voice. In the past, West Mountain Elder wouldn't personally deal with things related to catching people. He would leave it to Sunabayo to deal with it. However, because of Sunabayo's negligence, Kerlin was rescued, and he lost the shelter that he had found with great difficulty. So West Mountain Elder was a little worried, so he simply followed them. Okay, Master, I have already studied it. After those security guards patrol far away, we can make a move. Sunabayo pointed to the security guards not far away and said. He had waited a few times before, and had already figured out the security guards' patrol pattern. Although they could directly kill all the security guards, it was easy to make the matter bigger, and not easy to clean up. So Sunabayo didn't plan to do that. Besides that little girl, is there anyone else living in this villa? West Mountain Elder asked cautiously. No, she lives alone in the villa. Usually, there are very few people who come to find her. Even if there is, it is in the morning, and they leave not long after. At this time, I have never seen any guests visit. Sunabayo replied immediately. Elder Shishan nodded in satisfaction. Seeing that the security guards were getting further and further away, he felt that the time was right. He gave Sunabayo a look, and the two of them immediately used their movement techniques to sneak towards the target villa. Elder Shishan calmly came to the door of the villa and knocked on the door. Sunabayo hid in the bushes next to the door, vigilantly observing the movements in the surroundings in case someone suddenly appeared. Dong dong dong. Who are you? Really? After a while, a lazy female voice came from the villa. The voice sounded a little angry. She had probably fallen asleep and was woken up by the knocking on the door. Sorry to disturb you. I'm from the villa's property management office. I'm here for a routine inspection of the sewer pipes. Could you please open the door? In order to make his voice sound less hoarse and deep, Elder Shishan deliberately raised his voice by an octave. Sewer pipe? What's there to check? There's no problem with my sewer, so there's no need for a routine inspection. The female voice came again. It sounded a little clearer than before. She should have walked out of the room and was approaching the door. I'm sorry. We're just doing things according to the rules. If we don't check, we'll deduct your salary. Please cooperate. In fact, it's just a casual inspection. It won't take up much of your time. Elder Shishan said patiently. Although his words were polite, Elder Shishan had already cursed the woman in the villa several times in his heart. He had never spoken to anyone in such a humble manner before. So annoying. Wait a moment. I'll come to open the door after I get dressed. The woman said impatiently. However, even if she was a little impatient, her voice was still charming and intoxicating, causing Sunabayo in the bushes to be in a trance. After a while, Elder Shishan heard a soft footstep approaching, so he secretly prepared himself. He planned to wait for the woman to open the door and directly grab her away. Creak dash, the door opened, and Elder Shishan stretched out his hand like lightning. However, before he could touch the woman, he felt a sharp force suddenly hit him in the face. F***ck. Elder Shishan cursed. Fortunately, his reaction was quick. He quickly circulated his mental cultivation method and resisted for a while. However, he was still pushed several meters away by the sudden force. Elder Shishan screamed and fell heavily in the garden outside the villa. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. "Do you really think I'm a fool?" As the door gradually opened, a cold female voice came out. "Don't you know that before the property management people come to inspect, they will first call the owner to confirm whether the owner is at home, and then they will visit?" As soon as the voice fell, a noble and charming young woman came out. Perhaps because she dressed in a hurry, the style of her clothes was simple, but the material was obviously very expensive. She looked like a rich lady who had lived in a boudoir for a long time. However, at this time, the body of the rich woman exuded an extremely powerful demonic aura, which was very different from her image. Elder Shishan and Son Abayo immediately judged that this woman was actually a devil general great perfection expert. "Master, how are you?" Son Abayo was almost dumbfounded. He couldn't care about hiding anymore. He quickly ran over and helped Elder Shishan up. Then he turned to look at the rich woman with a face of fear. "Hee, I really didn't expect that there are still evil cultivators in Songming City." It seems that Song Qingshu didn't do her best before. She couldn't clean up all of you rats. The coquettish rich woman laughed softly and walked slowly in the direction of Elder Shishan. Her every move exuded a fatal temptation. "You, who are you? How do you know Song Qingshu?" Elder Shishan's voice was hoarse as he looked at the young woman uneasily. He thought that it was not good. He didn't expect that he would run into the muzzle of someone else's gun this time. "You don't have to worry about this." The rich woman stretched out her hand and admired her fingers. She smiled as if she was talking about a trivial matter. "It doesn't matter. Although I'm not as strong as Song Qingshu, it's more than enough to kill the two of you." Under Son Abayo's fearful gaze, the rich woman slowly raised her hand. However, just as she raised it halfway, she suddenly paused and turned to look outside. Messy footsteps sounded. She saw 3 figures rushing toward her villa not far away. When they got closer, she realized that they were all women, and one of them looked a little familiar. Chapter 1199. However, only a handful of people knew the inside story. Even the head of the Xie family, Xie Chaonan, was kept in the dark. "Ahem, senior sister Xiaofei, don't make fun of them. Look at how scared they are. Don't you see that there are 2 heretic cultivators here?" Hong Zhu helplessly rolled his eyes at Xie Fei, before turning his head to explain to the dumbstruck Lin Kuo, "And Li Xianer, don't mind her. Senior sister Xiao Fei's personality is usually like this. There's nothing wrong with her sexual orientation. She just likes to tease pretty little girls, that's all. This is also a way for her to cultivate her charm techniques." However, Xie Fei's identity as an immortal cultivator could not be revealed, so when the Xie family was in trouble, she could only watch from the sidelines. The reason why Xie Fei did not stay in a martial arts sect and ran to the secular world to hide in the Xie family as a young miss was because of her special physique. After she was discovered, she also became a member of an immortal cultivator sect. However, she was usually assigned to the secular world to secretly manage the Hong Chamber of Commerce's auction house business. "Oh, hello little sisters. Let me introduce myself. I'm Xie Fei, Hongzhu's senior sister. You all look very young, so you can just call me Sister Xiao Fei." Hee. Xie Fei smiled coquettishly. Xiao Chun had interacted with Xie Fei several times and did not notice any flaws. He only vaguely felt that the auctioneer Xiao Fei was somewhat familiar during the Spring Festival auction in the outer martial arts world. However, due to the series of events that followed, he had forgotten about her. "Trash, you're already at death's door, yet you're still so arrogant. Since you're not willing to talk, there's no point in keeping you alive." Hong Zhu smiled coldly and said mercilessly. Even so, Xie Fei secretly felt lucky. The older heretic cultivator's strength seemed to be about the same as hers. If she had not taken the initiative to launch a sneak attack and gain the upper hand, she might have had to put in a lot of effort. Good girl. Xiefei nodded with a smile. Suddenly, she reached out and pinched Kerlin's cheek. This little girl is quite cute. She looks very likable. However, this little nun is also not bad. Junior sister Hongzhu, where did you find these two exquisite little beauties? Shut up. Without waiting for Sun Abayo to finish speaking, Elder Shishan forcefully interrupted him. Then, while secretly circulating his mental cultivation method, he sneered and said, "Hee, don't waste your efforts. Lu Shuangshuang has already been taken away by people from the inner Wulin. If you want to save her, go to the inner Wulin and try to find people from the ghost cultivation sect." As for the other two, they were much slower. Kerlin was not a cultivator at all, and her physique was also not very good. After running a few dozen meters, she was already gasping for breath, and her face was pale, completely unable to keep up with Hongzhu's pace. But to use seduction techniques on women, wasn't that a little too exaggerated? Aren't seduction techniques usually used on men? Could it be that concubine Xia's seduction technique was unique? Alright, since junior sister Hongzhu is getting anxious, let's stop chatting and discuss how we should deal with these two evil cultivators. Xiefei gently spread out her hand. Her fingers were as slender as green onions. She smiled and said, "In any case, they are no different from dead people in my eyes." "Oh, it's nothing. Hello, big sister Xiaofei." Kerlin didn't know much about seduction techniques, but she didn't dare to ask too many questions. She bowed to concubine Xia once again and cautiously said, "Senior sister Xiaofei, you must not be too careless. These two evil cultivators are very powerful. Don't fall into their trap." Hongzhu's strength was relatively high, so she quickly ran to Sun Abayo's side and vigilantly looked at Sun Abayo and old man Shishan. She had wanted to ask about Lu Shuangshuang's whereabouts, but she was only trying her luck. Since she couldn't succeed now, there was no need to let these two people live any longer. In fact, during the auction, concubine Xia had already linked Xiao Chen to great hero White Fox. However, she didn't expose Xiao Chen's identity. After all, she was also a cultivator lurking in the secular world. As long as Xiao Chen didn't interfere with her matters, she wouldn't go and ruin his business. If Xiao Chen was here, he would probably be even more shocked. He didn't expect that the Xia family's resentful daughter, concubine Xia, was actually a devil general perfection stage expert. "Don't kill them yet. I still have something to ask them." Hongzhu waved his hand and slowly walked up to the two. He looked down at the trembling Sun Abayo and asked with a frown, "I'll give you a chance now. As long as you honestly tell me Lu Shuangshuang's whereabouts, I can spare your and your master's lives and hand you over to the Cultivators Association to deal with. If you refuse to speak, you will naturally know what will happen to you." Li Xian also wanted to quickly run over, but after seeing the situation, she could only carefully support Kerlin and slowly bring her to the front of the villa. Carefully bypassing old man Shishan and Sun Abayo, she arrived at Xiaofei and Hongzhu's side. After standing still, Li Xian quietly injected a trace of yuan qi into Kerlin's body to help her relieve her weary state. "Hello, elder sister Xiaofei." Kerlin and Li Xian exchanged a glance and obediently greeted her. Junior sister Hongzhu has come. Why do you suddenly have the time to come play with elder sister? And who are these two beautiful girls?" Xiaofei did not seem surprised. Instead, she stretched her waist, revealing the beautiful curves of her body. She gave off the feeling of someone who had just woken up, then casually brushed her hair behind her ear and asked in a slow voice, It's a long story. I'll explain it to you later." Hongzhu smiled and waved his hand. He pointed at the two girls and introduced them. "These two are my friends. This is Li Xian, a disciple of the Five Elements sect. That's why she's wearing a Taoist nun robe. As for that very pure-looking girl, her name is Kerlin. She's just an ordinary student. Don't think that just because you're from a cultivation sect, you're going to cry when you meet the experts of our internal martial arts world. Old man Shishan did not show the slightest trace of fear as he laughed mockingly. Sunabayo had long since pissed his pants. If old man Shishan was not injured, he might still have some room to resist. But in the current situation, he could only be at the mercy of others. Upon hearing Hongzhu's question, he immediately nodded and said, Thank you, heroine. Lu Shuang is, Li Xian, and Kerlin were startled by Xiefei's words. They were at a loss as to what to do. Why did Xiefei speak so strangely? She couldn't possibly like women, right? Li Xian, had a look of sudden realization. She thought to herself, no wonder Xiefei looked so similar to Hongzhu. It turns out that both of them are using charm techniques. No wonder they're fellow disciples. Li Xian secretly sized up Xiefei. She felt that this woman's every movement was extremely flirtatious. In some moments, she was quite similar to Hongzhu. She just couldn't remember which moment it was. Chapter 1200. Hongzhu was too lazy to pay any attention to him. She turned her head and smiled sweetly at Xiefei. Senior sister Xiaofei, I'll have to trouble you to get rid of these two scum. In any case, the question I wanted to ask is already. Be careful. Before Sunabayo's words fell, Xiefei saw old man Shishan suddenly stand up from behind her and push Sunabayo far away. Then with a shake of his body, a black mist spread out from his body. His entire skin turned red as he ferociously pounced towards Sunabayo. Boom! With a loud explosion, old man Shishan's body instantly exploded, black blood and pieces of his corpse splattering everywhere. Although Xiefei had warned Hongzhu in time to stay away, Hongzhu's shoulders and thighs were still stained with a lot of black blood. In just a breath's time, the black blood had completely corroded the clothes it touched, and even burned Hongzhu's skin. It was obvious how powerful the poison was. If Hongzhu had not heard Xiefei's cry of alarm, and quickly ran a few steps forward to get away from the center of the explosion, it would not have been as simple as having his clothes and skin burned. The consequences would have been unimaginable. He might have even been instantly corroded into a pile of bones. Taking advantage of the fact that Hongzhu and Xiefei were still in a state of shock, Sunabayo, who had been pushed far away by West Mountain Old Man, hastily stood up and scrambled away. He did not even dare to look at Hongzhu's fair and alluring skin after his clothes were corroded. Sunabayo planned to leave Songning City overnight after his escape. He did not dare to stay here any longer. Right now, he could only think of a way to contact the higher-ups of the ghost cultivation sect in the inner martial arts world, and then make further plans. Xiefei and the others were no longer in the mood to chase after Sunabayo. Instead, they gathered around Hongzhu and looked at her worriedly. Ouch, it hurts. That old thing is simply too ruthless. He actually used such a vicious move. Fortunately, my legs are nimble, otherwise I might have really died here today. Hongzhu felt a burning sensation on the skin on her shoulders and thighs. The pain was so great that she grimaced and sucked in a breath of cold air. Hongzhu looked down and saw that the black blood seemed to have a life of its own as it continued to corrode her skin. The originally small wound was gradually expanding, making it look extremely terrifying. As she stared at the ghastly wounds on Hongzhu's body, Lin Kuo was quite frightened as tears welled up in her eyes. So it turns out that in order to become a cultivator, one had to pay such a painful price. How terrifying. That was scary. Scared just like that? You're too timid. Sooner or later, you'll experience this pain. Just treat it as an internship now. It's good to get used to it in advance. Otherwise, when the time comes, you won't be able to make the correct judgment, and only know how to cry. Li Xianer patted Kerlin's shoulder gently, like an elder teaching a junior, and said meaningfully. Kerlin took a deep breath, barely managing to raise the corners of her mouth and wipe away her tears. In any case, it was too late for regrets now. Since she had already chosen to agree to Hongzhu's request, she should keep her promise. Alright, you guys don't nag here anymore. Hongzhu, come with me. Xiefei anxiously grabbed Hongzhu's hand and led her into the villa, still muttering. Hurry up and come with me to my room. Your wounds don't look serious, but I must immediately apply some ointment to stop the poison from spreading. Otherwise, If the black blood corrodes into your bones, things will become troublesome. Busy until late into the night, CFA finally managed to clean Hongju's wounds with great difficulty, removing all the black blood that had stained his skin. Then, she gently applied some healing ointment to Hongju's wounds and used a medical bandage to bandage the wounds. Only then did she breathe a big sigh of relief. After she finished bandaging the wounds, Hongju tried to move his shoulders and thighs. Although there was still a slight stinging pain, it was not as severe as before. He could not help but tease her with a smile. "Senior Sister Xiaofei, I didn't think that you would be so skilled at bandaging wounds. It seems that you usually tend to your man's wounds, right? Alright, don't mention that man to me. He and I are just sacrificial pawns in the marriage between our two families. We've already divorced. Don't tell me you still don't know about this?" CFA waved her hand and casually said, "It's still the same. How boring." Hongju curled his lips as he leaned back on the sofa in the room. Hongju and CFA chatted while Li Xianer and Kerlin sat to the side, almost not saying a word. It was not that they couldn't find a topic to intervene in, but rather, they were a little dumbfounded looking at these two different women. CFA was relatively older, but her bearing was more mature. Her arms were like lotus roots, and her figure was beautiful. Every move she made was filled with a deep temptation. Li Xianer also discovered that CFA did not use her charm technique on other women, but rather that the charm technique she practiced had penetrated deep into her bones. Usually, no matter what she did, she would exude a seductive charm. If CFA was said to be a plump and juicy peach, then Hongju was a sparkling and translucent cherry. Her every movement made people feel very comfortable. Her smile and words always carried a kind of moving aura, making people unable to help but recall their beautiful youth. Every frown and smile of hers exuded an indescribable charm that attracted the attention of others. With these two beautiful women chatting, Li Xianer and Kerlin felt that their eyes weren't enough to take in everything. How could they still want to chat with them? CFA didn't care about the two women's unusual behavior, and happily said, "Right, it's rare for the two of you to come and play with me. You should accompany me for a while. Recently, I've been walking the dog and playing cards every day. I've been cultivating alone at home, and I'm about to die of boredom. Forget it. I don't dare to stay in the secular world any longer." Hongju helplessly shook his head, looked at CFA and sternly said, "Senior Sister Xiaofei, I believe you've already heard that the sacrificial ceremony to open the cultivation world is about to be held. I've come here on the orders of Grandpa Patriarch to bring you and us back to the Hong family of the inner martial world." After saying that, Hongju secretly sighed. It seemed that Grandpa Patriarch was staking everything on this one throw. Otherwise he would not have specially sent me to find Senior Sister Xiaofei. Ah, what does it have to do with me, whether the immortal cultivation world's sacrificial ceremony is held or not? Could it be, old Patriarch Hong has found out? CFA's expression changed as she glanced at Hongju in astonishment. In fact, CFA was also aware that aside from her identity as a cultivator, there was indeed a little bit of spiritual energy in her body. However, it was very weak, not even 10%. Although she was qualified to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, it would not be of much use, and could only be considered as a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Besides Hongju, no one else knew that CFA was a woman with spiritual energy. Hongju and she were fellow disciples of the same sect, and had always had a good relationship. Therefore, when Hongju knew that CFA was unwilling to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, he had agreed to help her conceal the truth, and arrange for her to live a low-key life in the secular world. Now that the Hong family had suddenly said that they wanted to bring her back, could it be? Chapter 1201. Don't stare at me like that. If I was the one who revealed this matter, do you think you would still be able to live such a leisurely life in the secular world, playing cards and walking your dog every day? Hongju's sharp mind naturally saw through CFA's doubts and explained with a wry smile on his face. CFA's expression softened a little, but she still complained gloomily, "I don't mean to suspect you, It's just that after hiding for so many years with great difficulty, I didn't expect to be discovered so suddenly, so I'm a little unhappy," Hong Zhu said with a disappointed expression. In fact, this is also very normal. Although the Hong and Song families are small and obscure families in the inner martial world, they have powerful information channels in the dark. Even if I don't say anything, someone will find out sooner or later. Junior sister Hong Zhu, I can also understand what you mean, but, alas. CFA faintly sighed and said no more. Just now, CFA had indeed suspected for a split second that Hong Zhu was the one who had leaked the secret to her. However, she very quickly dismissed this thought. After all, Hong Zhu was right. With the underground forces of the Hong and Song families out there, no matter how she tried to hide, she would eventually be found. But what? Hey, what do you mean? Could it be that you have fallen in love with that Wang Xiongzhuang for a long time, so you can't bear to return to the inner martial world? Hong Zhu asked with great interest as he looked at CFA's hesitant expression, his gossipy heart suddenly surging. Hong Zhu remembered that ever since he knew CFA, he had never seen her fall in love with anyone. But looking at her current appearance, it was obvious that she already had someone she liked. TCH, don't mock me. How could I possibly fancy that useless guy? CFA rolled her eyes at Hong Zhu in annoyance and leaned back on the sofa. Then what's going on? Tell me honestly, or I won't let you off, Hong Zhu asked with a grin. CFA giggled, elegantly crossed her legs and said, "The person I like is a powerful ability user, who can kill people invisibly in minutes, and can also control other people's thoughts. He has a great reputation in our Songning city. How could that coward Wang Xiongzhuang compare to him?" CFA felt very proud every time Xiao Chun pretended to be the White Fox swordsman. This was the only reason why she stayed in Songning city. Although Xiao Chun had been missing for a long time, CFA didn't give up. She always believed that Xiao Chun would reappear one day, and she would successfully become the daughter-in-law of the Xiao family. Ah, are you talking about the White Fox? No way. How did you hook up with him? You've never told me this before. Hong Zhu blurted out in surprise upon hearing this familiar description. As he asked this question, Hong Zhu did not forget to cast a glance to the side. The originally dazed Lin was currently clenching her small fists tightly, an extremely nervous expression on her face. However, Consort Xia did not notice Lin Kuer's strange behavior, and instead happily nodded her head, as she happily continued. That's right, that's right. I didn't expect you to have heard of Hero White Fox. Actually, let me tell you, his real identity is the eldest young master of the Xiao family in Songning City, Xiao Chun. But this is no longer a secret. Now all the warriors in our Songning City worship him as an idol. After all, he is a psychic. Seeing CFA excitedly pulling Hong Zhu along and commenting on Xiao Chun, and the White Fox swordsman with eyes full of love, Lin felt a little restless. She could clearly feel that CFA had a strong affection for Xiao Chun, but she didn't know why. But Lin's heart was a little difficult to accept. It was as if a beloved treasure that should have belonged to her had suddenly been casually taken away by someone else. Cough cough. Senior sister Xiao Fei, don't you feel that the atmosphere in this room is a little strange? The more Hong Zhu listened, the more embarrassed he became. He quickly coughed a few times and gave CFA a meaningful look. Then, he looked in the direction of Lin. What's wrong? CFA had finally bumped into a sister from the same sect, and was in the middle of a lively conversation, when she was suddenly interrupted. She felt a little puzzled in her heart, but she still followed Hong Zhu's gaze, and saw a nervous and conflicted Lin Kuer. CFA was a few years older than Lin Kuer. Seeing Lin Kuer's girlish demeanor, she only needed to think for a moment to understand the reason. She stood up and gracefully walked to Lin Kuer's side. Sitting next to her, she charmingly laughed and teased. Kuer Mimi, why do you look so nervous? Is it because the environment here makes you uncomfortable? No, big sister's place is very good. I'm not uncomfortable. Lin quickly shook her head and denied in a low voice. Oh, if that's the case, then why do you have this expression? CFA giggled as she played with Lin's hair. As if suddenly realizing something, she said, Right, is it because of what I said just now? Could it be, You're also interested in great hero Xiao Chen? I don't know. Lin Kuo didn't know how to refute when her thoughts were exposed. She could only blush as she lowered her head and fiddled with the corner of her clothes. She stammered, not even knowing what she was saying. Hihi, I didn't expect our little sister Kuo to be so shy. If you like him, then so be it. It's not like it's something shameful. From now on we're good sisters, so what can't we say? Or are you afraid that I'll eat you up? CFA lightly pinched Kurlin's cheek and unscrupulously teased her. Although Li Xian didn't know the ins and outs of the matter, she had more or less understood it. Recalling her experience of catching ghosts with Xiao Chen, she couldn't help but be surprised by the taste of these girls. That arrogant boy even had 2 beauties hidden in his house. Who would have thought that there were so many women who liked him here? What was so good about him? Why didn't she notice? Wasn't it just that his strength was slightly higher? Enough, senior sister Xiaofei. Do you think everyone is as bold and unrestrained as you? Hangzhu also couldn't stand it anymore. He simply ran over and pulled Xiafei away a little. He sat between the two of them, leaving some space for Kurlin. What's so bold and unrestrained about it? We're going to sleep together in the future. So why are you afraid of teasing me now? Xiafei curled the corner of her mouth and stretched lazily, outlining a breathtaking and perfect curve. Stop fooling around, I have something to say. Hangzhu wasn't in the mood to joke at this time. With a solemn expression he said, Now that we've spoken, I might as well tell you that Xiao Chen has most likely been captured by the people of the inner martial arts world. Chapter 1202. What? Xiao Chen has been captured? Kurlin and Xiafei asked in unison. Kurlin was so anxious that she stood up. Hangzhu nodded, then continued. I've brought some people to the Hong clan earlier. Now, I'm using the information network. I already have to find a way to find out Xiao Chen's whereabouts. If you all can head to the inner martial arts world earlier, perhaps you can help us look for him before the sacrificial ceremony. This Xiao Chen is so powerful. How could he have been captured? Is there a mistake? Kurlin bit her lower lip and asked in a flustered manner while pulling Hangzhu along. She was thinking about how she could help Xiao Chen escape from danger, but she couldn't think of any way. She could only hate herself for being so weak that she couldn't do anything even if she wanted to. Hangzhu, are you sure that Xiao Chen has been captured by the people of the inner martial world? Xiafei did not get up and confirmed with Hangzhu again. Although Xiafei was also very worried about Xiao Chen's safety, she was after all a person who had experienced great storms and waves. Her mental fortitude was relatively strong, and she would not easily reveal her emotions. She was also a bit more steady when faced with a problem. I can't be 100% sure right now, but my Honging group has found out an absolutely reliable piece of information. It says that Xiao Chen's father has certainly been controlled by some powerful forces of the inner martial world. Hangzhu shook his head and said in a low voice, So, even if Xiao Chen hasn't been captured, he should be in the inner martial world right now, making preparations to rescue his father. All right, there's no time to lose. Let's set off immediately. Before the sacrificial ceremony begins, we must find Xiao Chen and bring him back safely. Xiafei immediately got up and walked out of the room with a solemn expression. Hey, where are you going? Hangzhu was startled and subconsciously asked. You guys sit here for a while. I'm going back to my room to tidy up some things. Xiafei said without looking back and left the room. Hangzhu and Li Xianer exchanged glances, both of them unable to understand the situation. However, all they could do now was wait. Li Xianer pressed the frightened Kurlin onto the sofa and comforted her softly. Kurlin, don't worry too much. That Xiao Chen is quite capable. He'll definitely be fine. You know him too? As if he had discovered a new continent, Hangzhu looked at Li Xianer in astonishment and asked, When did this happen? How come I never heard about it? I received a business deal in Lan City and met him there. But we didn't have much interaction. Li Xianer panicked and quickly explained, afraid that Kurlin would misunderstand something. Kurlin, on the other hand, did not have the time to think too much about it. Instead, she pulled Hongju's hand, her expression turning from timid to resolute as she softly said, "Elder sister Hongju, I want to cultivate. I want to become stronger. I don't want to be protected by others anymore. I also want to protect the people I want to protect." Hongju naturally understood the source of Kurlin's change. He patted her shoulder and was about to speak when they suddenly heard a woman's voice coming from the door. "What are you talking about? Let's go." The three of them simultaneously turned their heads to look and saw that CFA had already changed into a well-tailored set of clothes suitable for movement. She was carrying a small suitcase in her hand and looked like she was ready to leave. You've already packed?" Hongju asked in disbelief as he looked at CFA's attire. CFA suddenly becoming so capable and experience really surprised Hongju. He did not expect that this eldest young mistress, who usually played cards and walked her dog in a leisurely manner, would have already decided to head for the inner martial arts world in less than 10 minutes. Moreover, she had already packed her things. Most importantly, her goal was not to participate in the sacrificial ceremony. Heavens! How could Xiao Chun have such charisma that he could captivate CFA, who had always had her eyes on the top of her head, to the point that she was willing to risk her life for him? This was simply too inconceivable. In fact, Hongju did not understand that apart from the fact that she really liked Xiao Chun, CFA was also willing to risk her life because of the various things Xiao Chun had done for the Xie family in the past. This could also be considered as returning the favor on behalf of the Xie family. Although the Xie family had already given Xiao Chun a generous monetary reward, CFA felt that money alone was far from enough. With Xiao Chun's weak strength at the time, he had helped the Xie family clear away such a big trouble. She must do something more for Xiao Chun. CFA believed that even if the head of the Xie family, Xie Chaonan, knew of her thoughts, he would certainly support her in doing so. "Well, I'm done packing. If there's nothing else, let's go straight away." CFA smiled sweetly and led the three women to the villa's gate. Then she tightly locked the entire villa. Hongju naturally agreed to CFA's suggestion. Since she was willing to follow him to the Hong family, then his mission in Songning City had come to an end. After all, there were no more spiritual women in Songning City. Hongju felt that there was no need to stay any longer. The time for the immortal cultivation world's sacrificial ceremony was approaching. He had to bring the women back to report on his mission as soon as possible. While Hongju and his party left Songning City for the inner martial arts world, on the other side, the venerable secret realm finally opened as scheduled. Early in the morning, experts from various sects had already gathered outside the teleportation array, leading to the venerable secret realm. Although there were many people, it was not disorderly. This was because the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance had already divided the different sects' areas in advance. All the experts needed to do was to stand in their own areas and wait quietly for the Venerable Secret Realm to open. Not far in front of the crowd stood a tall platform with a row of neatly arranged seats. At this time, many of the higher-ups from various sects had already taken their seats. The higher-ups of the sects who were familiar with each other smiled and exchanged greetings with each other. Below the platform, the elites of the sects were also discussing how to quickly break through and become venerable experts after entering the Venerable Secret Realm. After a while, all the cultivators who were participating in the Venerable Secret Realm had arrived. The seats on the platform were also full. Only the main seat in the middle was empty. It seemed to be the seat reserved for the president of the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance. Xiao Chun stood among the Jia family's group with his arms crossed. He looked relaxed and at ease on the surface, but he secretly spread out his divine sense and gradually extended it in all directions. He wanted to investigate the surrounding situation. After a round of investigation with his divine sense, Xiao Chun discovered that apart from the Awakening Heaven sect and the other two clans, there were a few relatively familiar faces. He did not recognize any of the other groups. Xiao Chun also paid special attention to the Cloud Guide sect. He discovered that Grandma Nanshan was not participating either. Instead, an unfamiliar old man was leading the group. Ling who had originally been full of anticipation, now had a disappointed look on her face. She quietly hid behind Xiao Chun, not letting the people of the Cloud Guide sect discover her. Chapter 1203. Not far away, in the Six Harmonies factions camp, a few middle-aged men were pointing at Xiao Chen's group. From time to time, they would whisper into the ears of an old man with white hair and a youthful complexion. Anyone could tell that they were definitely looking for an opportunity to play some tricks on Xiao Chen's group. Xiao Chen did not even bother to eavesdrop on the petty tricks of such a weak sect. With his current strength, he could even easily kill a martial venerable at the peak of the martial honor realm. Therefore, he was not worried about the Six Directions sect's secret revenge. Just as the people on and below the platform were chatting enthusiastically, a young man suddenly appeared silently in the middle of the platform. Everyone in the square became serious. The people who were discussing in low voices instantly fell silent. They looked at the platform in awe. Obviously, they all knew the person who had just arrived. Many cultivators raised their heads to look at the young man with admiration. Xiao Chen looked around, then raised his head to take a glance and yawned out of boredom. The young man looked ordinary, but he exuded an insufferably arrogant aura. Xiao Chen guessed that he was the president of the Venerable Mystic Realm Alliance. Greetings, elites from various sects and clans. I am the president of the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance, Chou Wanqian. On behalf of all the members of the Venerable Secret Realm Alliance, I welcome you to participate in the trial of the Venerable Secret Realm. Chou Wanqian's eyes slowly swept across the square. His body shook slightly, and he quietly displayed the strength of a martial honor at the peak of the martial honor realm. A majestic pressure was instantly released. Apart from Xiao Chun and the other martial honor at the peak of the martial honor realm, the low-level cultivators all had ugly expressions. They bent their backs slightly, obviously suppressed by Chou Wanqian's pressure. Even a cultivator like Cheng Minjing turned pale from the pressure and could not breathe. Looking at the painful expressions on most people's faces, the corners of Chou Wanqian's mouth curled up slightly. It was as if he enjoyed the feeling of crushing all living beings. After a pause, Chou Wanqian withdrew his pressure and said with satisfaction, I believe all of you are here for one thing, and that is to successfully break through to the martial honor realm. Everyone felt the mountain-like pressure on their bodies disappear, and their expressions instantly relaxed. They heaved a long sigh of relief and nodded randomly. Although it's not forbidden to fight in the Venerable Secret Realm, I'd like to remind all of you to distinguish who's more important. Chou Wanqian's expression turned cold, and he warned, the main purpose of entering the mystic realm is to become a venerable one. If you don't break through successfully the first time, then the difficulty will gradually increase. I hope you all know what to do. The crowd looked at each other and felt sad. In fact, there were many disciples from the various sects who were still in the venerable realm, cultivating hard in order to make a breakthrough. The first thing you have to do after entering the honorable realm is to find a suitable place to go into seclusion. Chou Wanqian's face was expressionless as he continued. When the time comes, all you need to do is circulate your cultivation method with all your might, and you'll naturally be able to draw upon the Venerable One's origin power. As for the locations in the secret realm, where the Venerable One's origin power can be produced, I've already marked them clearly. Venerable origin power? What the hell is this thing? Xiao Chun was slightly taken aback. Although he had read the guidebook to the Venerable Realm, during the few days he was waiting for the secret realm to open, this was the first time he had heard of such a term. Xiao Chun, don't be so surprised. What venerable origin power? It's just a place with a higher concentration of heaven and earth spiritual qi. If you cultivate in such a place, you'll naturally be able to break through quickly. The elder heaven ancestor suddenly explained disdainfully, giving Xiao Chun a fright. He nodded his head in realization and asked curiously, Elder heaven ancestor, how do you know all this? Have you been to the venerable realm before? What's so difficult about that? Since ancient times, cultivation has always been done with the help of supreme grade pills, or heaven and earth spiritual qi. Since there's no need to take any medicine, then unless you're a special evil cultivator, you'll definitely use heaven and earth spiritual qi. Who said that you have to go in to find out? The elder heaven ancestor said no more after that. Xiao Chun recalled that the seclusion locations were all rather remote and far from each other. It was probably because of the uneven distribution of heaven and earth spiritual qi, and to prevent outsiders from disturbing them, the seclusion locations were purposely made this way. Chou Wanqian continued on the stage. Of course, not all of the seclusion locations marked in the secret realm are effective. After all, they were marked thousands of years ago, and some of them may have already lost their effectiveness. However, you don't have to worry. Every seclusion location is equipped with protective measures. As long as you stand or sit on the seclusion location and circulate your mental cultivation method, the protective measures will be activated. You don't have to worry about outsiders taking advantage of the situation. However, compared to the previous situation, Chou Wanqian's words didn't cause too much of a reaction. No one was surprised. After all, every sect had more or less someone who had passed through the venerable realm and became a venerable. Once they came out, they would naturally bring out the information they knew, so that the other disciples in the sect could use it as a reference. Breaking through to the venerable realm is the most important thing after entering the secret realm. But it's rare for you to come to the venerable realm. If you can successfully break through and still have the leisure to not immediately come out, you might as well take a stroll inside. Chou Wanqian's tone softened, and his expression relaxed. Some of the younger disciples were already curling their lips. No matter how big this secret realm was, how big could it be? After breaking through, they naturally had to come out and return to the sect as soon as possible. What was there to stroll around in there? Hee, the secret realm is very rich in heaven and earth treasures. I believe everyone will be interested. Chou Wanqian smiled and reminded them. However, on the contrary, there are also many dangers. Many ferocious beasts will suddenly attack you. If you are not careful, even a small ant can kill you. So, I advise you not to be greedy. You must understand the principle of stopping when you're ahead. Hearing the words heaven and earth treasures, the eyes of the disciples who had lost interest immediately lit up. Many of the weaker disciples were calculating in their hearts. If they couldn't successfully break through this time, it seemed like a good idea to get some heaven and earth treasures from the secret realm. At least when they returned, they could hand them over to the sect as a contribution and exchange them for more cultivation resources or status. However, anyone with a bit of brains knew that compared to those so-called heaven and earth treasures, breaking through to the venerable realm was more important. Even if they really wanted to look for heaven and earth treasures, they could only wait until they had broken through. Chapter 1204. There's one more thing. Although there's no time limit in the venerable realm, and you can stay in there for as long as you want, I'm sure you've heard that there was once a person who tried for a few years, but was unable to break through. However, he was unwilling to give up, and in the end, he was tortured into a lunatic. Not only did he lose hope of breaking through, he was even killed by the ferocious beasts. Chou Wanqian's tone changed again. Xiao Chun rubbed his nose, turned his head and whispered to Qing Minjing. Did you realize that this Chou Wanqian's speech is full of emotions? Those who don't know him might think he's a late-night radio host. What do you know? How is this a radio host? This is the host who tells stories, Xiao Gang. Qing Minjing rolled her eyes at Xiao Chun and said emotionally, Hello everyone, welcome to the Chengji Breakfast Shop sponsored and broadcasted. Before she could finish, Tian Souring also moved closer. Sister Minjing, what are you talking about? Where's the Chengji Breakfast Shop? Sister Souring is hungry and wants to go eat. Ahem, nothing. Qing Minjing finally realized what she had said. Her face instantly turned red, and she stared angrily at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun spread his hands innocently. Why is it my fault again? I'm being wronged. The disciples below the stage all had a look of disapproval, because what Chou Wanqian had said was something that had happened many years ago. Nowadays, many sects had gone through many trials in the venerable realm, and had already grasped a certain cultivation pattern. Only those who did not know the situation, and had weak willpower, would go crazy for no reason. As for the so-called ferocious beasts, they were not even worth mentioning. Since everyone had formed teams with their sex, they would definitely form teams to search for treasures. Even if they encountered a ferocious beast, they would definitely be able to fight it. Even if they could not kill it, they would definitely be able to escape unscathed. If they were lucky, they might even be able to earn a fortune. The thoughts of the disciples naturally did not escape the eyes of the president on the stage. Cho Wanqian smiled faintly, a hint of disdain flashing in his eyes, and said slowly, "Those of you who have such thoughts, feel free to stay in there and try. However, don't blame me for not warning you beforehand. The Venerable Realm will produce 5 elements calamity at random times, and in random areas. Those who are tired of living, or think that they are lucky enough to withstand all 5 elements calamity, can stay and experience it." 5 elements calamity? Everyone had never heard of this term. For a moment, they were a little confused. They looked at each other in confusion. As the name suggests, the 5 elements tribulation occurs in a certain area of the Venerable's secret realm. There will be natural disasters such as hailstorms, lightning strikes, fissures and gales. Of course, I'm sure you've all experienced these disasters in the inner martial world, or perhaps you've heard about them from your seniors in your sections. However, compared to the Venerable's secret realm, the natural disasters in the inner martial world are nothing. Cho Wanqian explained proudly, feeling that he was at the top of everyone's IQ. The originally nonchalant crowd was shocked at this moment, and all of them fell silent. Recalling that most of the seniors in the sect had died after encountering the 5 elements tribulation, and the few who were lucky enough to survive, when they described the scene that was like hell on earth, their eyes exuded an indescribable sense of fear. The wishful thinking that had sprouted in the hearts of the disciples under the platform suddenly vanished. So that was the 5 elements calamity. Many of them thought to themselves, "The Venerable Realm is so dangerous. It is indeed not a place to play tricks. Once I have successfully broken through, I'd better hurry up and come out, lest I lose my life in there." Alright, that's all I have to say. Now, all the sects and clans can line up and draw lots to enter the Venerable Secret Realm according to the order. After saying this, Cho Wanqian did not stay any longer. His figure flashed, and he disappeared from the stage without a trace. After that, many staff members of the Venerable Realm Alliance walked out from behind the stage. They checked the names of all the participants and collected the corresponding spiritual jades. After each sect paid the spiritual jades, someone would carry a big box for them to draw lots. The Jia family had drawn the 3rd last lot, and the 6 Directions sect happened to be in front of them. The Tang family followed them into the secret realm, and the Open Heaven sect, the leader of the demon sect, was the last to enter. Ha ha ha. Xiaochen, are you stupid? As a venerable expert, why are you following us into the secret realm? Xiaochen was waiting in line to enter the secret plane out of boredom. Suddenly, an arrogant voice came from behind him. Furthermore, it sounded rather familiar. Xiaochen rolled his eyes, turned around, and stared at that person as if he was looking at an idiot, and said coldly, "Tang Qianling, are you itching for a beating? It seems that the injuries from my beating have recovered. Do you feel nostalgic? Do you want to do it again? I guarantee that you will not be able to enter the Venerable Realm this time." "Oh, I don't believe that you would dare to beat me up in public." Tang Qianling laughed coldly. "Let's not talk about the experts from the Venerable Realm Alliance. Even my grandfather can ouch." Before Tang Qianling could finish his sentence, he felt a slap on the right side of his face. He spun a few times on the spot, swayed for a while, and finally stood up with great difficulty. "Oh yes, Tang Qianling, what did you say just now? What does your grandfather want to do? Is he going to treat me to a meal?" Xiaochen dusted off his hands as if he was dusting off dust, looked at the sky, and whistled as if it had nothing to do with him. "You." Tang Qianling felt a burning pain on his right cheek. He looked around and saw that the Venerable Realm Alliance staff were busy counting people. and did not seem to have noticed what had happened. Tang Qianling could not do anything to Xiao Chun, and could only point at his nose and said fiercely, "Just you wait, Xiao Chun. Once we enter the venerable realm, even if you have the ability to go to heaven or hell, you will be beaten up by us, not to mention a venerable expert. Sigh, looks like you have been beaten up silly by me, haven't you? You can't do anything to me outside. Don't tell me you'll be able to cheat inside?" Xiao Chun shrugged and sighed helplessly. Although Xiao Chun was being sarcastic, he still looked into the distance cautiously. As expected, he immediately noticed something amiss. The venerable experts from the Tang clan, Yu clan, and the other clans did not follow the group into the venerable realm. Instead, they turned around and returned to the inn at the pier. What was going on? Could it be that the experts of these clans and sects were not worried that their disciples would be killed inside? Chapter 1205. Although the seclusion site provided protection measures, these weaklings were likely to be killed by others before they reached the seclusion site. Xiao Chun could even imagine that there were only so many seclusion sites. If they wanted to snatch these places, it would definitely be a bloodbath. Thinking of this, Xiao Chun was too lazy to care about Tang Qianling. Instead, he turned to Jiao Muzin and asked, "Muzin, why did the venerable masters who led the teams go back? Do they have other ways to enter the venerable secret realm without spending spiritual jades?" "Huh. Oh, them." Jiao Muzin looked up and said casually, "They won't enter the secret realm. They are waiting for their disciples and clansmen to return at the inn outside." "Why? What if some of the venerable masters of the clans go in and kill the martial kings and demon kings in order to seize the seclusion site for their clansmen?" Xiao Chun asked in surprise. Jiao Muzin was startled. Suddenly he slapped his forehead and quickly explained, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that after entering the venerable secret realm, everyone's strength will be suppressed to the realm of the martial king Great Perfection and the demon king Great Perfection. Although they have the power of the venerable in their bodies, when they activate their martial qi and demonic qi, they will be suppressed to the realm of the king. The purpose is to prevent the situation you just mentioned from happening. If those venerable masters destroy the balance and kill the disciples of other clans and sects to hinder their advancement, the situation will be out of control." "Oh, so that's how it is. I was wondering why Tang Qianling was so proud." Xiao Chun shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. So be it. After all, he was a cultivator. Who knew if this lousy secret realm would be able to see through his true strength? Besides, even if I am also suppressed to the realm of the Demon King Great Perfection, I have enough ability to kill them. Moreover, I have the help of the fire of the underworld and Little Demonin. If it really doesn't work, I can let the Elder Heaven Ancestor possess me. I have so many tricks up my sleeves. Why should I be afraid of a few insignificant people? Xiao Chun, although we all know that you are very powerful, I think we should be more careful when we go in." Jiao Muzin was not as optimistic as Xiao Chun. He lowered his voice and said, "Even if Cheng Minjing and I have successfully advanced to the venerable realm, our strength will still be stuck at the peak martial king realm and the peak demon king realm. If any of our enemies target us and take the opportunity to attack us, we may not be able to escape every time. Moreover, the mystery land itself is full of dangers." Recalling Chou Wanqian's description of the calamity of 5 elements, Jiao Muzin still felt a lingering fear. After entering the venerable realm, other than avoiding the schemes of others, he also had to be on guard against the calamity of 5 elements. It was not a safe place at all. In fact, Jiao Muzin was not willing to let Xiao Chun take the risk. He was worried that he would be impulsive and have an accident. However, considering that Cheng Minjing and the others were going together, Xiao Chun would definitely be worried. So Jiao Muzin did not say his inner thoughts in the end. Hee Xiao Chun, now you know how powerful it is, right? Tang Qianling stood far away and saw Xiao Chun and Jiao Muzin whispering, so he immediately laughed loudly. Tang Qianling did not dare to approach Xiao Chun again, lest he would be beaten again. He just sneered from afar. What a pity. Now that you have handed over the spiritual jade and registered your name, it is too late to regret it. Otherwise, the people of the Mystery Land Alliance will think that you are playing with them and will take you down. What's the point of saying so much nonsense? This young master is a nouveau riche and doesn't lack anything in my hands, much less spiritual jades. I'm more than happy to tour the place. Later on, I'll bring my pet dog over and let it cultivate there as well. When the time comes, the invincible venerable dog will come out and let the dog bite a fool like you to death. Xiao Chen laughed coldly and said without a care in the world. Ha ha ha. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tang Qianling's group immediately laughed unscrupulously. They all felt that Xiao Chen must have been scared out of his wits. He actually started spouting nonsense. Let a pet dog become a venerable? Only an idiot from the secular world like Xiao Chen could say such brainless words. Among them, Tang Qianling laughed the loudest. From his point of view, Xiao Chen was not far from death. As long as they entered the venerable realm, Xiao Chen's cultivation would be suppressed. In addition, Tang Qianling had already made the necessary arrangements. No matter how powerful this kid was, he would not be able to withstand the attacks of so many martial kings and demon kings at the same time. Xiao Chen, even if you are the monkey son, you will not be able to escape from the five-finger mountain of the big sects and families. By the way, Xiao Chen, if you did not mention it, I would have almost forgotten about it. Cheng Minjing's expression suddenly changed. She pulled Xiao Chen and said anxiously, "Our universe invincible dog is still in the pet shop. I don't know how it is now. We have not returned for so long. Will the shop owner mistreat it?" Cheng Minjing now regretted leaving in such a hurry that she did not bring the invincible dog with her. Although the invincible dog did not seem to be a special breed, and its bloodline was not pure, it was a very smart dog. It was such a waste to leave it in the pet shop. Yes, Sister Sour has seen that dog before. It's quite cute, and it's very human-like. No matter what order Sister Sour gives it, it will follow. Tian Sour said excitedly. What's its name again? The Universe Invincible Super Dog? Wrong. It is the Universe Invincible Super Dog, not the Invincible Super Dog. Cheng Minjing waved her hand, then went into a daze. She muttered to herself, "Why do I feel like this scene is a little familiar?" Don't worry. I have already asked Ling Qinyu and Su Chuxia to bring the invincible dog away. Xiao Chen knew that Cheng Minjing was recalling the happy times they had in the villa. He smiled and said, "The invincible dog should be in their dormitory now. Nothing will happen to it." In fact, Xiao Chen only remembered about the invincible dog 2 or 3 days after leaving Lan City. He quickly called Ling Qinyu and asked her to bring the dog back and keep it by her side. Cheng Minjing heaved a sigh of relief. She was indebted to Invincible Dog, and it was her first pet. Although it wasn't pretty, it was smart. She didn't want to give it up so easily. As the queue continued to move forward, it was finally the Jia family's turn to enter the teleportation portal. However, this portal could only teleport one person at a time. They had to enter one by one according to the order. The other clans and sects would enter according to seniority. The Jia clan did not have so many unnecessary formalities. Xiao Chen was the closest to them, so he planned to enter first. This way he could explore the way first. Then he would wait for the others inside. Of course, the remaining people did not have any objections. Chapter 1206. After stepping into the transmitting formation, Xiao Chen only felt a white light flash before his eyes. Then the surrounding scenery suddenly changed, and the environment immediately changed. Before Xiao Chen could take a closer look, a few whooshes sounded behind him. The people of the Jia family, Cheng Minjing, and the other girls also came in. Seeing this extremely strange environment, they were a bit confused and didn't know where to go. Fortunately, they were all teleported together, so they could take care of each other. Xiao Chen looked around and realized that this was an extremely vast and empty land. Furthermore, it was shrouded in a faint mist, and the sunlight couldn't be seen clearly. He could only vaguely make out the situation a dozen or so meters away. as well as the vague outlines of mountains and forests in the distance. This scene was very similar to the foggy forest that Xiao Chun passed through when he walked from the outer martial arts world to the inner martial arts world. The difference was that the fog in this secret realm was slightly lighter, but it was still impossible to see the whole picture at a glance. Even though they were standing at a commanding position, they still couldn't find it for a while. Xiao Chun quietly spread out his divine awareness and led the group to a big tree not far away. After standing still, he carefully observed the places that he could reach with his divine awareness and judged where to go next. Jia Muzhen and the others didn't say anything. Looking at Xiao Chun with his eyes closed, they waited quietly. Now, they unconsciously followed Xiao Chun's lead and vaguely regarded him as their leader. I have a general direction. After a while, Xiao Chun opened his eyes, pointed to the north and said, "Let's go north for the time being. There are more closed-door training points there. So far, only 2 or 3 groups of people have gone there, and they haven't found anything strange yet." Just now, Xiao Chun had explored as far as he could in the 4 directions as possible. Many groups had gone to the west and south. Although there weren't many groups in the east, ferocious beasts appeared from time to time, and the degree of danger was relatively high. Therefore, Xiao Chun judged that the north was relatively safer. Hardly had Xiao Chun finished his words when a person suddenly walked out of the group and walked in another direction alone. "Jia Tuyao, where are you going?" Jia Muzhen jumped in fright and hurriedly shouted. "Xiao Chun already said that he's going north. Are you going to die by going south alone?" The one who left was Jia Tuyao. Without even turning his head around, he said, "If you want to follow Xiao Chun, then go ahead. He has offended so many people outside. Now there must be people waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on him. I don't want to follow him. When the time comes, I will suffer an unexpected disaster." After saying that, Jia Tuyao walked further and further away. Soon, he disappeared in the mist, leaving no trace behind. Jia Muzhen was furious. Just as he was about to rush forward and flip out, he was stopped by Xiao Chun. "Forget it. Senator, if that idiot wants to leave by himself, then let him be. Anyway, his death has nothing to do with us. We don't want another piece of trash to drag us down." Xiao Chun coldly glanced at the direction where Jia Tuyao left, then turned around and said, "All right, let's go now, or we might not even be able to get the rest of the closed-door cultivation sites." Jia Muzhen hesitated for a while, then reluctantly nodded. Although he also hated Jia Tuyao. After all, they were all members of the Jia family. Now that he was the young master of the Jia family, since he had brought Jia Tuyao into the secret realm, he had to shoulder the responsibility of the young master and take everyone out together. He didn't expect that Jia Tuyao would be so vengeful. As soon as he entered the secret realm, he left the team and acted alone. For the sake of the big picture, Jia Muzhen couldn't leave the whole team to chase after him. Therefore, he could only let him go. When the team was about to leave, Miss Xing suddenly stopped and said to Xiao Chun, "Xiao Chun, I can't go with you. Elder Sun sent me a message, asking me to wait for him near the teleportation site. I guess he has an important task for me." "Oh, okay. Then take care of yourself." Xiao Chun nodded and lightly patted Miss Xing's shoulder. Miss Xing had mentioned this to him before. Xiao Chun could also guess that Elder Sun, that old bastard, would definitely not let this matter go. "Xing Gongzi, actually, you don't have to go." Tian Sour interrupted and said, "Since you are going to shed all pretense of cordiality with those people from Open Heaven sect sooner or later, why don't you take this opportunity to completely cut off your relationship with them?" Just like Sister Sour, she left just like that, and didn't return for more than 10 years. Now she has directly cut off all contact with us. That's not very good. I think it's better for me to go. Miss Xing thought for a while, then shook her head and said with a smile, "Maybe they will think of other ways to frame Xiao Chun. When that time comes, I will be by their side and know some inside information. I can also warn you in advance." Miss Xing didn't want to go back, because she couldn't bear to leave Open Heaven sect. She had long disliked the actions of her own sect. However, since her identity hadn't been exposed yet, Miss Xing wanted to use this as a cover for Xiao Chun and inquire about relevant information. That's fine too. Xiao Chun didn't object, but he still warned her with a serious expression. However, I feel that the person with the surname Sun may already be suspicious of you. If he interrogates you, you don't have to deliberately cover for me. Just tell him the truth. Say that I brought people north, and leave the rest to me. This isn't appropriate, right? You guys have to be busy breaking through to the venerable realm, and deal with the people from Open Heaven sect. I'm afraid you won't have the time to be distracted. Miss Xing frowned and said disapprovingly. Hee, have you forgotten what Chou Wanqian said previously? Even if the people with the surname Sun find us, we will definitely be safe and sound. Xiao Chun smiled slightly. He wasn't worried at all about what Miss Xing said happening. Miss Xing was startled. She tried hard to recall what the leader of the alliance had just said. Soon she understood what Xiao Chun meant. Chou Wanqian said that there were protective measures at the seclusion site. It could allow people who were focused on breaking through to not be affected by the outside world. It was probably because of this that Xiao Chun felt at ease and dared to let her speak the truth. But what if you guys didn't find the seclusion site, or it has already been occupied by others? Miss Xing asked worriedly. You don't have to worry about this. If the people from Open Heaven sect really dare to come, I have the confidence to make them stay here. The corner of Xiao Chun's mouth curled up, revealing a trace of a smile. The reason why Xiao Chun dared to say this was naturally not because he was speaking without thinking. He had just discovered a little secret. Even if the flame of the underworld and in Little Demon didn't make a move, he could easily and happily take care of Elder Sun and the others. Seeing that Xiao Chun was so confident, Miss Xing didn't say anything else and nodded. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.